Chapter 152. Leah could tell that Gu Mengmeng was really scared, so he hugged her and said, "If you don't like it, then we won't use this. Let me think if there are other similar things." Gu Mengmeng immediately shook her head. She did not dare to count on Leah to think of a solution, or else who knows what head he would bring over later. Gu Mengmeng looked around and suddenly had an idea. She pointed at the tree branches that Bode had brought back to make firewood and said, This, we will use this." Leah followed Gu Mengmeng's little hand and looked at the tree branches that were no thicker than Gu Mengmeng's arm with a confused face and asked, "This?" Gu Mengmeng nodded her head heavily and said, Yes, this." Gu Mengmeng ran over as she said, and gestured for Leah to help her cut out a branch that was about 10 centimeters thick. Then, she dug out the wood core and turned it into a very retro and simple wooden bowl. But the modern wooden bowls were all oiled and this simple one would definitely be permeable, and there would be wood shavings if used directly. So Gu Mengmeng directly plucked 2 large leaves from the tree and placed them on the bottom of the bowl. Then she used another bowl to fill the bowl with fish meat and soup. Gu Mengmeng was used to taking care of others, and just as she was about to pass the fish soup to Sandy, she was carried away from the pot by Leah and found an empty place to sit down. Leah was still in his half-orc form, using his large tail as a personal sofa for Gu Mengmeng while he sat cross-legged with one leg bent. His elbow was placed on his bent knee and he looked sideways at Gu Mengmeng, admiring the way she ate. Gu Mengmeng used 2 thin tree branches as chopsticks. Although it was not easy to use bent branches, it was still better than tiger ribs. She picked up a piece of fish meat and sent it into her mouth. The texture was dense and sweet. After eating a few roasted meat, this fish meat soup was like a refreshing stream. Gu Mengmeng used her chopsticks to pick up another piece and sent it to Li's mouth, saying, "Try it, the taste is not bad." Leah placed the tip of his nose in front of the fish meat and smelled it. Then his lips curled up in his mouth that looked like he was going to eat the fish meat, brushing past Gu Mengmeng's chopsticks and kissed her lips. This kiss was very light, but it messed up the rhythm of Gu Mengmeng's heartbeat. Everyone was watching. But Leah did not care about how others looked at him. He just looked at Gu Mengmeng's mouth tenderly and licked his lips. Indeed, very delicious. Gu Mengmeng pursed her lips and smiled faintly. She lowered her head and sent the fish on her chopsticks into her mouth. She did not dare to look at Li's eyes and could only eat the food in her bowl secretly. She didn't even know when the food in the bowl was gone, because her ears were filled with the sound of her own heartbeat. Leah took over the empty bowl and asked, "Do you want more?" "I'll help you get a bowl." Gu Mengmeng shook her head shyly and said, "No need, I'm full." Leah frowned, his heart aching that his Mengmeng only ate so little every meal. The food that he had spent so much effort to cook ended up in Sandy and Maya's stomachs. After thinking for a while, Leah whispered into Gu Mengmeng's ear, "But I'm still hungry." Gu Mengmeng then realized that she had actually finished everything and left nothing for Leah. She hurriedly said, "Then I'll help you get another bowl." Leah pulled Gu Mengmeng's little hand and said, "I'm the witch doctor of Saint Nazir. How can I snatch food from a female?" Aside from the topic, babes, remember to give me that free ticket. Those who have gifts, please focus on today. Today is the last day for the statistics. After today, gifts won't be counted as results. Then leave a message and ask the babies to move their fingers and cheer for Jean Eyre and Gu Mengmeng, please. Chapter 153. Gu Mengmeng looked at Sandy and Maya who were about to fight over those few pieces of fish and said hesitantly, "Then, go get a bowl for yourself and share some with me, all right?" Leah said. Gu Mengmeng nodded. As a competent girlfriend, she would definitely not let her boyfriend go hungry. So Gu Mengmeng jumped out from Li's tail with the bowl in hand and rushed to the pot, snatching a bowl of fish from Sandy and Maya's pincer attack. The steam from the fish shrouded Gu Mengmeng's little face. From Li's perspective, she seemed to be the only color in this world. Opening his arms, Leah took the initiative to welcome Gu Mengmeng who was walking towards him. He kept his tail and hugged her with his body, feeling the wonderful feeling of her in his arms. Gu Mengmeng seemed to have gotten used to being hugged these few days, so she did not resist or feel awkward. She just picked up a piece of fish and blew on it before sending it to Li's lips. She opened her mouth as if she was feeding a child and said, Come, open your mouth. Ah. Leah could not help but smile but used one hand to push the chopsticks back into Gu Mingming's mouth. As Gu Mingming looked at him with her big innocent eyes, he leaned towards her lips again and kissed her little mouth. His nimble tongue minced the fish in Gu Mingming's mouth, before releasing her little mouth reluctantly. Before he withdrew, he sucked on her little lilac tongue again. Some saliva dripped down from their parted lips, reflecting the sunlight and looking crystal clear. Gu Mingming's face flushed red. She finally understood what Leah meant by share some with me. So, there was such a way to divide. Gu Mingming instinctively swallowed the fish in her mouth, but did not dare to feed Leah a second time. She directly placed the chopsticks in front of Leah and looked away shyly, saying, You eat it yourself. Leah loved Gu Mingming's shy look very much, especially her little mouth, which always gave off a seductive scent, making him want to taste it again and again. Using his slender and bony fingers to hook Gu Mingming's little chin, Leah said with a pure and innocent face, I don't know how to use these 2 tree branches. Gu Mingming stuffed the bowl into Lee's hands and ran away as if she was escaping for her life. As she ran, she shouted, If you don't know how to use chopsticks, use your hands. Looking at Gu Mingming's escaping back view, Lee's heart sank. Could it be that he had still pushed her too hard? Although she said she ran away, she didn't go far. She just ran to Sandy and Maya's side. These 2 little females, who usually did not even dare to breathe loudly in front of Nina, were now at loggerheads with each other over a pot of fish, refusing to give in to each other. Gu Mingming walked to the middle and forcibly separated the 2 of them, saying, There are plenty of these fish in the stream. If it's not enough, we can just catch another 2 to cut them up and put everything into the soup. The soup is ready-made, and it doesn't take much effort to make. What's there to fight over? Maya's understanding of Gu Mingming was that Gu Mingming was the one who beat Nina up, and she had always been the one being stepped on by Nina. So towards Gu Mingming, she desired and feared her. Now that Gu Mingming had spoken, she naturally did not dare to fight over it. Moreover, they were eating the ingredients found by Sandy's partner. Even if she was a female, she would not dare to snatch the food away from Sandy's partner. So Maya obediently took a step back, then looked at Sandy seriously and asked, Sandy, can I let Nissan in? I want him to help me catch a few more water shuttles, so we can eat together. Aside from the topic, Gu Mingming, Leah, you have your own hands and feet. Why do you want to snatch the food in my mouth? Leah, I was kissing you. You said before, lovers is a relationship where I can kiss you if I want to. Gu Mingming, you even said you are the witch doctor of Saint Nazir and cannot snatch food from females. Leah, you are not a female from Saint Nazir. You are my female. Gu Mingming blushed, turned around and ran away. Chapter 154. Sandy nodded her head in agreement. Maya then waved her hand and a wolf leaped in. Gu Mingming still instinctively took a step back, even though this wolf was obviously half the size of Elvis, and its color was just a normal gray. After seeing Elvis's original form, this gray wolf looked like the huskies in the neighborhood. But even so, the natural fear humans had towards beasts still made Gu Mingming's heart skip a beat. Leah did not miss Gu Mingming's frightened expression, so when Nissan passed by him, he accidentally kicked him back to his original position. Leah stretched his back and stood up, calling out to Bode, The females don't have enough food, follow me to help them catch some food. Bode suddenly felt the glory of a leopard's life. He was actually not ordered around by Gu Mingming. He was so happy he did not know why, but he just felt like he could straighten his back. Bode followed behind Leah all the way to the stream. When he passed by Nissan, Leah only gave him a look and Nissan followed behind Leah without any hesitation. Lee's lips moved slightly, but Gu Mingming naturally did not know what he was saying as they were too far apart. But the other males present heard it clearly. Lee's instruction with a devilish smile was, no one is allowed to show their original form in front of Gu Mingming again. Gu Mingming took advantage of the free time and asked Sandy to order her partners to learn from Leah to make bowls and chopsticks of all sizes using wood. She chose a piece of wood that was as thick as Gu Mingming's waist, dug out the middle, and made 2 small holes in symmetrical areas. Then she tied some vines to it and it became the simplest water bucket. Luckily, the males in the beast world had strong hands-on skills. Although it was not as beautiful as Lee's, it at least had the basic functions. It did not look good, but it was fine as long as it could be used. When Sandy's partners returned with the new tools, Gu Mingming used a bigger bowl to add some water into the pot. Then, she used the long chopsticks to stir while humming a tune, waiting for Leah and the rest to return in satisfaction. Sandy, on the other hand, forgot to look at the pot as she stared at Gu Mingming with eyes brimming with love. Gu Mingming, you're really amazing. You know how to make so many strange but useful things, and you can even sing. Gu Mingming grinned. She looked at the cutlery on the floor that could only be destroyed as a defective product in the modern world. She really did not dare to accept Sandy's compliment. However, she was not going to pass on the responsibility of singing. Clearing her throat, Gu Mingming smiled at Sandy. You like listening to songs? Sandy nodded as if she was pounding garlic. She clasped her hands in front of her chest and instantly turned into a fangirl. Legend had it that only the mermaid tribe in the deep sea and some migrating birds knew how to sing. But Saint Nazaire was far away from the ocean, and none of the birds that knew how to sing would pass by here when migrating. So to Sandy, or even the entire Saint Nazaire, singing was a luxury. Gu Mingming did not know this. She was just purely pleased by Sandy's expectant gaze. Hence, she hummed twice to set the tone. She then stirred the fish soup in the pot while singing. Other than being in love, we're also fortunate to have the happiness of chatting with a good friend. You're my dowry, my most precious collection. I won't marry a man who doesn't nod his head. I'm your dowry. Please keep me by your side. Don't marry a man who thinks I'm too noisy. Sandy and Maya were already in a daze. They only looked at Gu Mingming with adoration, and did not notice that Leah, Bode and Nissan had already returned with the fish soup. Only when Gu Mingming finished singing the last note, and was hugged by Leah, did the two of them regain their senses. They exclaimed in surprise, Gu Mingming, you sang so beautifully. It's the most beautiful voice in the world. Aside from the topic, the song that Gu Mingming was singing was called Dowry. It was sung by Guijing, and it was rather nice. Then, I would like to thank my precious prodigal son Forever Alone, and our precious Xian, from QQ Reading. With your support, this novel could achieve such results today. Once again, I would like to thank everyone for voting and leaving comments for me these few days. Thank you, thank you. Chapter 155. Gu Mingming did not reply to Sandy. Please forgive her, she was a person who prioritized love over friendship, a person who only cared about the opposite sex. Moreover, she and Leah were already in the honeymoon phase, so she could only see Leah. She believed that Sandy would understand. You're back, it's been hard on you. Gu Mingming held Lee's neck and kissed him on the cheek. Lee's expression softened, but he still could not hide his disappointment. You sang really well, it's a pity. I couldn't listen to the whole thing. Gu Mingming smiled with her eyes squinted. It's nothing, isn't it just singing? If you want to listen, I can sing for you every day. Leah raised his brows and smiled. He kissed Gu Mingming's cheek. I'm looking forward to it. Gu Mingming saw that Leah clearly wanted to listen to her singing now, so she did not reject him. She nestled in Lee's arms and sang Tian Fujian's Little Luck. After she finished singing, she looked up at Leah and smiled sweetly. Leah hooked Gu Mingming's chin with his fingers and covered her lips with his. After kissing for a long time, he called out in a slightly hoarse voice. Gu Mingming, Gu Mingming, Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming looked at Leah in a daze. Since when did Leah stop calling her by her full name? Suddenly calling her like this made Gu Mingming feel uncomfortable. And this feeling of unfamiliarity pounded against her heart, messing up the rhythm of her heartbeat. I'm calling your name very seriously. Leah kissed Gu Mingming's forehead again. Then he whispered in her ear. Because I know that meeting you is the luckiest thing that has happened to me in my entire life. Gu Mingming felt a sweetness in her heart. She could not help but laugh. She hugged Leah back and patted his back gently. It's just lyrics, don't take it too seriously. Many lyricists are just forcing themselves to write new lyrics. They don't have any real content. Leah did not say much. He just kissed Gu Mingming's lips again. I'll go cook some fish for you guys. Gu Mingming was a little surprised. Leah had always only cared about her. Why was he suddenly so friendly to Sandy and Maya? When she turned back, she saw Bode's face was flushed with grievance. He took the initiative to take the bowl that Gu Mingming used just now, and helped her to fold the new clean leaves. He passed it to her and said, "I don't find you troublesome anymore. You're good, you're good." Gu Mingming was at a loss. Did they all take the wrong medicine just to catch some fish? Sandy was very considerate. She walked over and said, "They must have heard the song you sang for me and Maya. Gu Mingming, you're so nice. You must be singing this so that Leah won't dare to bully us in the future, right?" Gu Mingming really wanted to say that it was just a misunderstanding. But since it was already like this, Gu Mingming decided not to explain further. After all, Yu Xijin's story was a lesson to be learned. Leah improved on Gu Mingming's foundation, and the taste of the fish meat was even more delicious. Gu Mingming, who was already full, also ate another bowl of fish. Only then did Leah carry Bode's wash-stone pot, and carry Gu Mingming back in satisfaction. Gu Mingming was still carrying a big bowl in her arms. She had snatched it back for Elvis when the fish Leah cooked was just out of the pot. Under the setting sun, Lee's silver hair was dyed with a faint afterglow. It appeared to be a mysterious color between pink and purple. The gentle breeze blew some strands of hair away. From Gu Mingming's angle, the words "otherworldly" were clearly written on the side of Lee's face. As she stared at him, she fell into a deep sleep. Lee's embrace was really reassuring. Aside from the topic. Chapter 156. The next morning, when Gu Mingming woke up, she could only see darkness in front of her. She was drenched in sweat, and when she stretched out her hands, she realized that she was surrounded by soft and furry sensations. Sensing Gu Mingming's movement, the constant temperature living furry 360-degree bed automatically separated into two sides, black on the left and white on the right. Gu Mingming sat up and stretched, then turned around to look at the two huge creatures lying beside her. She could not help but exclaim, F********. With that, she pounced back to her original position and rolled left and right. Who could understand the feeling of hugging a husky on one's left and a Samoyed on the other, both with extremely eye-catching body shapes? Gu Mingming just wanted to laugh out loud. Who else but me? Leah and Elvis did not transform into their human forms, but maintained their original forms to look at this little female who was behaving atrociously on them. In the past, anyone who saw their original forms would run away and avoid them. Only she seemed to love their original forms. And after yesterday's incident, Leah clearly knew that Gu Mingming did not have a special fetish for male original forms, because when Nissan appeared in his original form in front of her, her reaction was obviously fear. Elvis looked at Gu Mingming's unbridled look and felt warmth in his heart. The corners of his lips curled upwards, revealing a smile. But, damn it, he was in his original form now. His smile directly scared Gu Mingming. Seeing Gu Mingming's face suddenly turning green, Elvis and Leah instantly transformed into their human forms and supported her with concern. What's wrong? Why is your face suddenly so ugly? Are you feeling unwell anywhere? Gu Mingming's face once again turned red at an unimaginable speed. Damn it. Both of you are not wearing any damn clothes. Gu Mingming already felt that her nasal cavity had received a serious blow, and two warm currents flowed down her nose. Gu Mingming turned around immediately and stammered, Beast skin dress, wear it properly. Elvis and Leah looked at each other and shook their heads helplessly. Elvis turned around and went into the depths of the cave to retrieve the beast skin dress, while Leah walked behind Gu Mingming seductively, swaying his hips and swaying his hips. He hugged her from behind and bent down slightly to accommodate her height. His lips were less than a millimeter away from Gu Mingming's earlobe. He huffed and said, You're the only one here, why are you wearing that? Gu Mingming's heart was beating like a drum, and she felt like steam was coming out of her face. He gulped and said, I can't take it. I'll have a nosebleed. Lee's slender and fair fingers brushed past the area below Gu Mingming's nose. His fingers were indeed stained with a bewitching shade of red. He licked it with the tip of his tongue and swallowed that fishy sweetness. Leah said meaningfully, Can I help you clean it up? Gu Mingming did not forget how Leah cleaned her nosebleed in the stream. Once was enough, her little heart could not take a second round. So she hurriedly waved her hands and said, "No need, no need. Quickly wear the beast skin dress and my nosebleed will stop." Leah chuckled and lifted Gu Mingming's chin to raise her head to prevent her nosebleed from worsening. But when Gu Mingming raised her head, she met Lee's eyes, who was standing behind her and looking down at her. Leah, who was topless, had the lazy look of someone who had just woken up in the morning, and an ambiguous smile that belonged exclusively to Gu Mingming. He kissed her forehead lightly and said, "Good morning, my Gu Mingming. Aside from the topic, thank you to the little darlings seeing deer in Han Shi, and loving rainy days who tipped me in QQ bookstore. Thank you to all the little darlings who helped me leave messages and update various statistics during the PK period. When I know the results of this PK, I will inform everyone immediately. Regardless of success or failure, the process of us working hard together is extremely precious to me." Chapter 157. With Elvis's hearing, he naturally heard everything that happened outside. But other than acting as if nothing had happened, he had no other choice. Being able to see her the moment he woke up in the morning was already enough for him. Holding on to the two beast skin skirts, Elvis wrapped one around his waist and threw the other one to Leah. "Nina's male was almost killed by you. If you don't go and take a look, he might not be able to survive." Leah shook his head. Leah took over the beast skin dress reluctantly, but did not wear it. Instead, he wiped Gu Mingming's nose to clean her little face. Then he did not care about the nosebleed staining his beast skin dress, making him look like he was on his period. "Mingming doesn't like Nina," Leah said as he tied the beast skin dress. "I don't like what Mingming doesn't like either." Elvis remained silent and sighed. "I don't like her either." Suddenly, the three of them looked at each other and laughed. Gu Mingming obediently helped Leah tie the beast skin dress, and tried her best to ignore the blood stain that seemed to be caused by her period. She patted Leah lightly with her little hands and gestured for him to sit down. Leah obeyed. Gu Mingming tore a strip of beast skin from the side, and bit it in her mouth. Then, she used her hands to gather Lee's silver hair, and tied a strand of hair from each side of his ears together. Then, she twisted it inwards and a simple hairstyle was formed. Gu Mingming walked to Leah to take a look and nodded in satisfaction, saying, "I was thinking yesterday that this hairstyle would definitely suit you. It's not too deliberate, and it can still display your outstanding beauty. You're so handsome." Leah had never cared much about his hair, but after Gu Mingming's praise, Leah felt that his hair was really not bad. With a smile, Leah tapped Gu Mingming's little nose and said, "I know you're the softest. You don't have to flatter me like this. I'll go and treat Nina's partner. After all, he's from Saint Nazaire and as a witch doctor, I won't leave him to die." Gu Mingming also felt that her flattery was a little exaggerated, but beauty is in the eye of the beholder. She could praise her own boyfriend however she wanted, right? Who could control the subjective thoughts of a young girl in love? Leah stood up and held Gu Mingming's little hand reluctantly, saying, "I know you don't like Nina, so I won't bring you along. I'll ask Elvis to pluck some fruits for you later to fill your stomach. I'll bring you a water shuttle when I return, alright?" Gu Mingming thought about Elvis's shocking culinary skills and nodded her head in understanding. "Alright." Leah held Gu Mingming's little hand and kissed it before turning and leaving. Only Elvis and Gu Mingming were left in the cave, and the atmosphere became awkward. Gu Mingming cleared her throat and said, I'm going to the stream to wash up. Do you want to come along?" Gu Vis nodded and carried her, and walked towards the river. He up. When she reached the stream, Gu Mingming realized that she was wearing a different set of clothes from the one she had worn last night. She tilted her head and asked, "These clothes, Elas?" "That." The second half of Gu Mingming's sentence was stuck in her throat and turned into an O. After answering, Gu Mingming did not dare to look back at Elvis. She just squatted down beside the river and splashed some cold water on her face. There was a strange uneasiness in her heart, but she could not pinpoint what it was. There was a voice in her heart that kept praying for Elvis to not open his mouth, but it was obvious that Gu Mingming did not burn enough incense usually, so the deities did not have the intention to protect her. Have you considered the matter we talked about the last time? Elvis finally opened his mouth. The previous question he asked was just 3 words. What about me? Aside from the topic, this is the last update for today. We'll resume our normal updates tomorrow and wait for the editor to inform me of the PK results. If we pass this round of PK successfully, there will be a 2P session and a new round of explosive updates. During this period of waiting, we'll resume our normal schedule of 2 updates a day. Chapter 158. Gu Mingming froze while she was washing her face. She pursed her lips and stared into the water for a while before finally deciding to face it. Shaking off the water droplets on her hands, Gu Mingming stood up and faced Elvis. She frowned unknowingly. She did not know why, but she just felt guilty towards him. But it was useless to avoid what she had to face, wasn't it? Moreover, she had nowhere to run. Elvis, I know you treat me very well, but I really can't accept you. Gu Mingming slowly approached Elvis and stopped 3 steps away from him. She raised her head and said seriously, I know this is Saint Nazir and the rules of the world that I was originally in do not apply here. I am willing to try to follow the customs here, but things like polygamy, I really can't do it. Elvis stood at the same spot, like an iron statue. He looked at Gu Mingming for a long time before asking, why not me? Gu Mingming was silent for a while. Yeah, why not Elvis? He was the first person she met. When they first met, she thought he was a dream. So unattainable, so dreamy and illusory. She hugged him and molested him, even saying, I will not take responsibility as a proverb. It was just a joke at that time, but now, it seemed like it was destined. Elvis was strong and he treated her extremely well. But unfortunately, his heart was biased towards that flirtatious snow fox. Many things could not be explained just like that. Gu Mingming sighed helplessly and said, how can there be a why in matters of the heart? Can you explain clearly why you like me? Elvis looked at Gu Mingming in silence for a long time. Gu Mingming smiled faintly and said, is it because I am prettier than the other females here? But no matter how good my looks are, I will still grow old. Is it because I know more than the other females? But the things I know, even if I don't mate with you, I will impart them to the people of Saint Nazir. Sooner or later, everyone will learn what I know. Then will I still be special? Elvis was not Leah. He was not as eloquent as Leah. But he knew that what Gu Mingming said was wrong. Even if she grew old one day and became ordinary, he had absolute confidence that he would still love her, or even love her even more. Gu Mingming wanted to say something more, but Elvis took 2 steps forward and pulled her into his arms. His voice was low and hoarse, with a tinge of loneliness and begging. I won't fight with Leah for the position of the first partner. I just want to stay by your side. Gu Mingming pushed Elvis, but he did not budge at all. She wanted to say something, but Elvis did not give her a chance. Your identity is special. Leah alone cannot protect you. Not just me. You need more and stronger partners. Leah knows this too. Before Elvis could finish his sentence, Gu Mingming said, I'm different from the females here. I'm not someone who can only wait for others to protect me. Elvis was taken aback and felt a little desolate. Yes, she was the messenger of the beast deity and was different from the other females who could only wait for males to protect them. Gu Mingming took the opportunity when Elvis was in a daze and pulled herself out from his arms. She took 2 steps back and said, when Leah returns later, I will move into his cave. I have troubled you during this period of time. Thank you for taking care of me. Aside from the topic, thank you to my QQ reading darling. Dream, Little Rabbit, Jade Treasure, Dream Wanderer's Dream, Low Voice, Hua Fei Hua Style as a reward. And thank you to Xiaoxiang's darling Big Banyan Tree for her recommendation vote. Thank you, and to Xiaoxiang's darling Yu Xiao of the 4 Young Masters, QQ381DC0DB2, for her gift of flowers. Thank you to everyone for your company and support along the way. I still do not know the results of the PK at the Booktown. I will share it with everyone once I receive the news. Chapter 159. Elvis's spine stiffened and his blood seemed to have frozen in that instant. He could not breathe for a long time, and could only stare at Gu Mingming fixedly. That pair of eyes that were as clear as a deer's were filled with determination, and determination. Elvis knew that this expression was not just a female's willful and angry words. She was really going to leave his life. The left side of her chest stopped for a long time before a deafening sound rang in Elvis's ears. His eyes were bloodshot and his vision blurred. Turning around resolutely, Elvis only said one sentence. "You don't have to leave." Then he left with big strides. Looking at Elvis's back, Gu Mingming felt like she was about to be swallowed by guilt. Rejecting someone was really a stressful thing. Gu Mingming only hoped that she would not have to do it a second time in this lifetime. She swore that she would never be envious of the school bell being confessed to 8 times a day, and that rejecting someone was as easy as chewing potato chips. What did Elvis mean when he said she didn't have to leave? Was he going to let her stay in the cave? That was not good. Rejecting someone and still asking them to leave without a penny? How shameless was that? Gu Mingming felt that she could not do such a thing, so she decided to pack her things first and move to Li's place when he returned. Returning to the cave, Gu Mingming looked down at her aching feet. She finally understood why Leah and Elvis always carried her every time she left the house, and almost never let her walk on her own. Their thoughtfulness was because she was too slow and only realized it now. Looking around, Gu Mingming's vision was limited, and she could only see less than 10 square meters around the entrance of the cave. Any further in and it was pitch black. If Gu Mingming went in, she would be blind with her eyes wide open. However, when he thought about it, he had transmigrated here while swimming. The only thing that belonged to him was probably the bikini that he had bought from the salesperson to coincidentally meet a senior from the swimming club. So there was really nothing much to pack. Gu Mingming wore the bikini and then put on the clothes that Elvis made for her. Yeah, there was a protective cover all over, and it was indeed much safer than being in a vacuum. Gu Mingming patted her hands in boredom and paced back and forth at the entrance of the cave, waiting for Leah to return. She prayed silently in her heart, hoping that Leah would return earlier than Elvis, so that it would not be too awkward. But after waiting for a long time, the sun had already set and Leah was still not back. Furthermore, Elvis did not return. The cave in the night was still very frightening. It was all because of this damn territorial awareness. As the leader of Saint Nazir, Elvis lived in the largest territory. Not to mention neighbors, there was not even a bug in the surroundings. At this moment, the only thing that could accompany Gu Mingming was her blurry shadow that was illuminated by the silver moonlight. Other than the sound of the wind, she could only hear her own heartbeat. The longer she waited, the more flustered she got. Elvis and Leah had never left her alone like this before. Could it be that Leah had gone to heal Nina's partner, but Nina did not appreciate his kindness, and allowed her other partners to attack Leah instead? Thinking about this, Gu Mingming's mind was already filled with the image of Leah lying in a pool of blood, barely breathing. Standing up abruptly, Gu Mingming did not care about the pain in her leg and ran toward Sandy's house. She did not know where Nina's house was located, so she could only ask Sandy for help. After running for a short distance, she saw a pair of green eyes staring at her in the dark. She staggered and fell to the ground. She took a few steps back in fear, only to realize that her legs and hands were jelly. In the face of such danger, she did not even have the ability to escape. She could only watch as the pair of green eyes slowly approached her, step by step. Aside from the topic, that babies, let's make a deal, we won't send razor blades. Chapter 160. When the owner of the eyes completely appeared in front of Gu Mingming from the night sky, she was instead relieved. Elvis? Why did you only come back now? Gu Mingming tried to stand up, but realized that her legs were too weak to stand up. She just sat cross-legged on the ground with her hands hanging weakly on the outside of her knees. She looked up at the black wolf in front of her and said, "Did you see Leah? He still hasn't returned. I'm a little worried." Elvis did not transform into his human form, and just used his head to nudge Gu Mingming, signaling her to return to the cave. Gu Mingming tilted her head and asked Elvis, "What's wrong? Did something happen? Why don't you transform back into your human form?" Elvis nudged Gu Mingming a few more times, but she stubbornly refused to go back. Elvis had no choice but to throw her onto his back and carry her back to the cave. Even though they were only a few steps apart, Gu Mingming could clearly feel Elvis's abnormality. Even though he tried his best to hide it, Gu Mingming still discovered that his hind leg seemed to be injured. Gu Mingming did not struggle along the way as she was afraid of worsening Elvis's injuries. Only until Elvis sent her into the cave and turned to leave did Gu Mingming open her arms and block Elvis's path. "What happened to your leg? You're injured, right?" Elvis instinctively moved his leg back, and a low whimper came from his throat. Gu Mingming did not understand beast language and could only reply anxiously. "Leah went to treat Nina's partner and hasn't returned for a day. Why don't you rest in the cave first and I'll find Leah to treat your injury?" Gu Mingming said and turned to run out. But Elvis did not care about his injury as he bit the back of Gu Mingming's dress and brought her back into his arms. With his front paws, he pulled Gu Mingming into his arms. Gu Mingming did not feel as much pressure when facing Elvis in his beast form. Moreover, his hind leg was clearly injured, and if she struggled, it would definitely cause a second injury. Hence, Gu Mingming did not dare to move recklessly, and could only allow Elvis to protect her under his abdomen. He rubbed his chin against the top of her head gently, and finally placed her head on his neck. His chin, the softest part of his lower jaw, gently pressed against the top of her head. He hugged her just like that, and did not sleep for the whole night. Gu Mingming did not know when she fell asleep, but when she woke up again, Elvis had already disappeared. There were some washed fruits placed at the entrance of the cave, which must have been left there by Elvis. Gu Mingming looked around but did not find any traces of Li's return. A huge sense of uneasiness and suspicion spread in Gu Mingming's heart. She could not be bothered to eat those fruits, nor could she be bothered with how painful her feet were. She just relied on her memory to walk out of Elvis's territory and headed straight for Sandy's place. Before Gu Mingming reached Sandy's house, Sandy had already come out of the cave to welcome her. Her eyes were bloodshot and red. It was obvious that she had been crying. "You?" Gu Mingming could not make a request in Sandy's current state, so she asked with concern. "What happened? Did Nina bully you again?" Sandy shook her head. The tears that she had finally stopped started to fall again. She held onto Gu Mingming's little hand and stared fixedly at her with her tear-filled eyes. Biting her lower lip, she could not say a single word. Finally, she pulled Gu Mingming into her arms and hugged her tightly. Then, she burst into heart-throbbing sobs until she could not breathe. Gu Mingming patted Sandy's back lightly. She did not know what had happened, but she felt as if there was a dark cloud floating above her head, making it hard for her to breathe. Aside from the topic, recommending her good friend Hua Zhixingbao's article, Young Master Gu's Flash Marriage Sweet Wife. A sweet article about love after a flash marriage. The rich and handsome Gu Sunqing got married in a low-profile flash marriage. The couple in the flash marriage was the daughter of the unknown Yu Jiaojiao. Everyone said that Yu Jiaojiao received this honor because she saved the Milky Way galaxy, but they did not know that their fates were already intertwined 2 years ago. Gu Sunqing from Jin City was handsome and rich. More importantly, he had no scandals, and was rumored to not be close to women. He had been cold for 27 years and fell headfirst into Yu Jiaojiao, the little vixen. After the marriage, Gu Sunqing's peaceful life was in turmoil. President Gu, Madam broke the old master's favorite vase. The man did not even lift his head. Just find a similar one and send it over. President Gu, Madam released old Madam's favorite parrot. Go to South America to find a new one for her. President Gu, Madam went on a date with old Madam's sugar baby. Chapter 161. Sandy cried for a long time while Gu Mingming let her hug her blankly, until she finally stopped crying. She sobbed and said, "Gu Mingming, don't be too sad. Although Leah, you still have Elvis. Hurry up and mate with Elvis, don't let Nina." Sob. Sandy stuttered her words, but Gu Mingming's heart skipped a beat. She held onto Sandy's shoulder and asked with furrowed brows and squinted eyes, "Say, what happened to Leah?" Sandy looked at Gu Mingming with her swollen eyes and asked timidly, "You still don't know?" Gu Mingming asked, "What should I know?" Sandy cried even louder. Gu Mingming had never been so frustrated before. She was absolutely sure that Sandy was not crying because she was bullied, but because of her, and it had something to do with Leah. Don't cry, tell me what happened first. Where is Leah? Gu Mingming held onto Sandy's shoulder tightly and forced her to calm down. Sandy cried until her nose was covered in tears and snot. She said in a sobbing tone, Leah is going to mate with Nina. What? Gu Mingming staggered 2 steps back before shaking her head and forcing a smile. Impossible. This is impossible. Leah was still fine with me yesterday, and he is going to mate with Nina today. How is this possible? It's true, the entire tribe knows about it. Gu Mingming had long let go of Sandy's shoulder, but she was still standing at the same spot, crying loudly with Gu Mingming's support. Gu Mingming's head was buzzing and she could not think straight. She could not figure out why Leah would do this. Gu Mingming held onto Nina's arm and resisted the tears in her eyes. Bring me to Nina's house. What do you want to do? Sandy held onto Gu Mingming's hand and said, Elvis is not by your side now. It's too dangerous for you to go there alone. What if? Gu Mingming chuckled and said, What if? Would Leah still do anything to me? Sandy pursed her lips and did not reply, but from her expression, one could tell that this was what she was worried about. Gu Mingming did not care so much and pulled Sandy out. Although Bo did not like Gu Mingming ordering him around all the time, he had received many favors from Gu Mingming. Now that Gu Mingming had dragged Sandy along, he could not just stand by and watch. So Bode carried Sandy on his back and carried Gu Mingming in his arms with the other hand. With a dark face he said, I will send you over. Gu Mingming could not divert her attention to thank him. She just wanted to find Leah quickly and bring him back. Bode's speed was very fast, and he arrived at the outskirts of Nina's territory in no time. He placed Sandy and Gu Mingming down and said, I can only send you up to here. If anything happens, just shout out loud and I will go in and save you. Gu Mingming was not in the mood to listen to Bode's instructions, so she ran towards Nina's cave barefooted. Before he reached the door, he saw Nina strutting out of the cave with Leah beside her. Gu Mingming ignored Nina and looked straight at Leah. She tried her best to smile and said, Leah, you did not return home for a day. I was very worried about you. Leah, I am here to fetch you. Let's go home. Leah stood at his original spot and maintained his elegant yet distant smile. He looked at Gu Mingming and replied, I think I can't go with you anymore. Aside from the topic, thank you to QQ Readings Girls Future and Last Sight for their tips. Then, because I am going to start my Leah plot, I will be lurking in the QQ group and pretending to be dead for the next few days, because I am afraid of being beaten up. I will only appear when I give out meat to everyone a few days later. Chapter 162. Why? Gu Mingming's smile froze on her face. Leah clearly did not reply, but her tears fell down uncontrollably. Gu Mingming ignored the sourness in her eyes and did not want to analyze the reason why her heart felt so suffocated. She just wanted to call Leah back with the brightest smile. But Leah stood at the same spot and did not move an inch. He was still smiling gently and replied, Gu Mingming, it's almost winter. Gu Mingming did not understand what Leah meant and could only wipe away the tears in her eyes quickly. She looked at Leah attentively and waited for him to continue. Lee's gaze passed through Gu Mingming and drifted to a faraway place. He continued in a disappointed tone, I've already become an adult for a long time. If I don't mate soon, I'll miss the opportunity to give birth to the strongest cubs. Gu Mingming's mind exploded and her heart was in turmoil. A thought kept surfacing in her mind. Leah left her because she was unwilling to mate. That's right from the start, she only intended to date Leah. When Leah confessed to her, she even told Leah clearly that she would not mate with him, and could only date him in order to lessen her psychological burden. She could occupy Lee's good side confidently and tell herself, this is a consensual thing, but now, Leah was unwilling. Gu Mingming was trembling all over, but she could not say a word. She could only clench her fists tightly and look at Leah. Her tears flowed down from the corners of her eyes like a beautiful stream. She did not know what she was hoping for, and she also knew that this looked very unpromising. But she just could not turn around suavely, and could not say those words to make him stay. Leah did not give Gu Mingming too much time to organize her emotions. He continued as if Gu Mengmeng was someone unrelated to him. Nina promised that her mating rights will always belong to me until she gives birth to a strong cub for me. So, I have to stay by her side and help her recuperate. That's right. Nina held her head high and puffed out her chest. She had never felt so carefree before. She took a small step forward and said, "So what if you became the first beauty of Saint Nazaire? Dragging along two good males like Leah and Elvis, but not willing to mate with them. Are you asking them to sacrifice for you for nothing? How selfish. I'm different. I can give Leah a litter or even several litters of cubs. With Lee's strength and my perfect genes, our baby will definitely be a king in the future." Gu Mengmeng took a quick step forward and raised her hand to hit Nina. But just as she was about to raise her hand, her wrist was grabbed tightly by someone. Nina hid behind Lee's back like a startled bird and gave Gu Mengmeng an embarrassed smile. She did not say much and just hugged Lee's waist tightly for protection. On the other hand, Leah held onto Gu Mengmeng's wrist with one hand and patted Nina's back gently with the other. His gaze met with Gu Mengmeng's doubtful gaze. His smile was still so elegant, like a demon or a deity, but it did not have the warmth he had when he looked at her in the past. Lee's voice was cold and calm like an ancient well, piercing to the bone. "Nina is my female. No one can touch her, including you." Gu Mengmeng tried to retract her wrist, but Leah did not let go. She could clearly feel the sharp pain coming from her wrist. This was Lee's warning. If she dared to touch Nina again, he would break her wrist? Ha, Sandy's words really came true. Leah really did touch her. Aside from the topic, thank you to Dan Xiaoxing and Big Momo for their long reviews on QQ Reading. To be honest, I'm very touched. These days, there are very few people willing to spend money to read novels. There are even fewer people willing to write long reviews for a work than to spend money to read novels. It's almost to the point of being as rare as a phoenix feather and a unicorn horn. I have to say that I'm lucky and blessed to receive two such heartfelt long reviews in one day. Chapter 163. What if I hit her? What do you want? Kill me? Gu Mengmeng clenched her teeth and raised her head stubbornly. Damn, someone snatched her boyfriend and still dared to show off to her. If she could bear with this, she, Gu Mengmeng, should be able to ascend to heaven and become a bodhisattva. Leah shook his head and said, I won't. Gu Mengmeng's eyes brightened with a tinge of anticipation. Leah continued immediately. With me around, I won't let you hit her. Gu Mengmeng smiled bitterly and nodded, indicating that she understood. Leah then let go of her hand and stood in between her and Nina, not giving her any chance to hurt Nina. Good, very good. Gu Mengmeng took a step back and used her other hand to support her numb wrist. She looked at Leah and said, Since I know that you are safe and sound, I can rest assured. Even if you are not with me, I still wish you happiness. With that, Gu Mengmeng turned around and moved her feet with difficulty, step by step, back to where she was. Nina's words were like a thorn, piercing straight into Gu Mengmeng's heart. Every time her heart beat, the sharpness would penetrate deeper. Gu Mengmeng, you are so selfish. You can't give a promise, so what right do you have to dominate Leah? Her footsteps were heavy, as if she was dragging the entire world. Just 3 to 5 steps. Gu Mengmeng already felt that she had exhausted all her energy. Can't stop, can't stop. Gu Mengmeng kept shouting to herself in her heart. She didn't want to part with good intentions. She didn't want Leah to remember her begging for pity in a weak and pathetic state. She didn't want it. Gu Mengmeng bit her lower lip tightly, trying to hold back her developed tear glands. She clenched her fists tightly and hung them by her sides, not allowing herself to show the action of wiping her tears. She thought that as long as she did that, no one would know that she was crying. But she forgot how sensitive the senses of males in the beast world were. Her first tear was seen clearly by everyone present. Xiaomeng. Just as Gu Mengmeng was about to give up, someone held her shoulders. Gu Mengmeng looked up but could not see what the person in front of her looked like. But, in the entire Saint Nazaire, only Elvis would call her Xiaomeng. Gu Mengmeng bit her lower lip and could not say a word. She felt that her throat was dry and tight, and she could not make a sound. Elvis carried Gu Mengmeng in his arms, one hand supporting her butt and the other on her back. He patted her gently and let her lean on his shoulder, Elvis's voice was a little hoarse. Even though he tried his best to control it, he could not hide his heartache. After deliberating for a long while, Elvis only said one sentence. "It's all right, I'm here to bring you home." With that, Elvis carried Gu Mengmeng and turned to leave. Other than Gu Mengmeng, he did not even look at anyone else. Walking out of Nina's territory, Gu Mengmeng started to choke with sobs. By the time she reached Elvis's territory, Gu Mengmeng had already cried so much that she could not even make a sound. She could only open her mouth wide to let out a gasp, with tears flowing down her cheeks. It would be nonsense to say that Gu Mengmeng's crying was beautiful. Now, her nose was full of tears and mucus. She was as pathetic as she could be and as ugly as she could be. But even so, Elvis still felt an unprecedented heartache. It was as if something in his left chest was being torn apart by sharp claws and fangs, being gnawed away bit by bit until nothing was left. Aside from the topic. Hello everyone, this is Mr. Automatic Update of Stored Manuscripts. Chapter 164. Even Gu Mengmeng herself did not know when she fell asleep. It was only when her throat was so dry that she had no choice but to open her eyes. Only then did she realize that her eyes were swollen like peaches, and she could only open them a little. Elvis brought a cup of water to Gu Mengmeng's mouth, and she took it without hesitation and started gulping it down in big mouthfuls. Elvis was afraid that she would choke, so he patted her back lightly. After Gu Mengmeng finished drinking, she returned the cup to Elvis and stood up to walk out without saying a word. Elvis held on to Gu Mengmeng's wrist and asked, "You still want to find him?" Gu Mengmeng knew that the he Elvis was referring to was definitely Leah. Just thinking of that name made Gu Mengmeng's heart ache. She did not have the confidence to see Leah again and hear those heartless words again. So she shook her head in denial. Elvis heaved a long sigh of relief, and the strength in his hand relaxed a little. He did not want to see Gu Mengmeng's heart-wrenching look again. Elvis took a step forward and hugged Gu Mengmeng in his arms, saying, "Your feet are all bruised and are not suitable for walking for now. Where are you going? I'll bring you there." Gu Mengmeng lowered her head to look at the bottom of her feet. There was a large patch of bruised skin with traces of blood seeping through it, and it looked rather miserable. But why did she not feel any pain? Oh, perhaps there was a limit to the pain a human body could feel? It was all concentrated on her heart, and she could not feel any other parts of her body. But Gu Mengmeng did not reject Elvis's suggestion. Her throat could barely open to speak after drinking water, but it was extremely hoarse. Every word that came out of her mouth felt like a small knife was slicing her throat. "I want to go to the lakeside, the place where I first met you." Elvis did not know what Gu Mengmeng wanted to do. In fact, he could not understand most of the things that Gu Mengmeng did. But to Elvis, as long as Gu Mengmeng did not cry, he had no opinion on what she wanted to do. So Elvis took out a thicker piece of beast skin and wrapped Gu Mengmeng up. Although winter was not here yet, the weather had already turned cold, and he could not let his Xiaomeng freeze. Gu Mengmeng did not resist and let Elvis do everything on her body. Gu Mengmeng, who had been as quiet as a rag doll, only reacted when Elvis carried her to the lake where they first met. Elvis's lips curled up slightly as he pointed at the surface of the lake. "That day, you were standing there with half your body in the lake. The water reflected on your face, and you looked like a lost elf. I couldn't help but get close to you, but I was afraid to disturb you. Then you actually kissed me." Elvis sunk into his memories. It had only been a short while, but now that he was back here, he felt as if it was a lifetime ago. Gu Mengmeng wanted to get down from Elvis's arms, but Elvis did not stop her and placed her down according to her wishes. Gu Mengmeng ignored Elvis's words, or rather, she ignored everything. Gu Mengmeng walked towards the lake, taking off the beast skin Elvis had on her as she walked. In the end, she was only left with the bikini she was wearing when they first met. She stopped by the lakeside and turned around to look at Elvis. Her lips curled up slightly as she said to Elvis, "Sorry, thank you. Goodbye." After saying that, Gu Mengmeng fell backwards, causing a huge splash. Gu Mengmeng curled up her body and held her breath, forcing herself to sink into the water. She wanted to go back, return to the place where she belonged. There was no bloody bonfire party, No twisted marriage values, no Elvis, no Leah. Aside from the topic. Chapter 165. The moment Gu Mengmeng laid on her back, Elvis rushed towards her almost instinctively. His hand was in midair, and he could not grab hold of Gu Mengmeng in time. The uneasiness in his heart grew rapidly, and without any hesitation, Elvis jumped into the lake and hugged Gu Mengmeng, who was holding her breath and sinking tightly in his arms. With a push of his feet, he came out of the water. The lake water was already very cold. It was nothing to males, but it could be fatal to females. Elvis did not have the time to scold her. He frantically carried the shivering Gu Mengmeng and ran into the cave. As he ran, he howled towards the sky, as if he was sending some kind of message. Gu Mengmeng's mind was in a daze. Her stomach churned from the jolting of Elvis's journey, and she poured out a lot of water from her mouth and nose. After Elvis carried Gu Mengmeng back to the cave, he quickly took out a thick beast skin to wipe her dry before wrapping her up. Then, he used the firewood he had prepared earlier to start a fire. When everything was ready, Elvis transformed into a wolf and used his abdomen to protect the frozen Gu Mengmeng, using his own body heat to maintain her body temperature. Unfortunately, Gu Mengmeng had been tormented too much these few days. Her body was already weak during her period of menstruation, and the cold water made her even more uncomfortable. She curled up and closed her eyes tightly, looking as pitiful as an abandoned baby. Not long after, Elvis heard movement at the entrance of the cave. He transformed into a human and gently placed Gu Mengmeng beside the fire. He stroked her hair and murmured bitterly, "Can't I?" Gu Mengmeng did not respond. She hugged her shoulders tightly and curled up her body as much as possible. She was uneasy and in pain. Elvis kissed her forehead lightly and said in a comforting tone, it's all right now. The person you want is here. I'll let him come in and accompany you, all right?" Gu Mengmeng opened her eyes. Her eyelids were sore and painful. She reached out weakly and held onto Elvis's fingers. She asked in a hoarse voice, "Who is here?" Elvis smiled bitterly and answered, "Leah, he's here. He's at the border of the territory. I'll call him in to see you and let him accompany you, all right?" Suddenly, Gu Mengmeng's nose turned sour, and she started crying. She choked with sobs and couldn't speak. She just shook her head desperately. Elvis looked at her strangely and said with heartache, "What's wrong? Why are you crying again?" Gu Mengmeng did not reply and just shook her head while crying. She used all her strength to grab onto Elvis's fingers, but still felt that it was not firm enough. She was afraid that Elvis would pull his hand out to call Leah in. Elvis frowned and wiped away Gu Mengmeng's tears with heartache. He stood beside her and hugged her in his arms to soothe her uneasiness. He whispered into her ear, "Aren't you torturing yourself because of him?" Gu Mengmeng did not say a word and just shook her head furiously in Elvis's arms. Elvis could not bear for her to be so agitated, so he tried asking, "You don't want to see him? Then should I let him leave?" Only then did Gu Mengmeng calm down. She slowly loosened her grip on Elvis's fingers and continued hugging her shoulders, curling herself into a ball. Elvis sighed. He could never understand what Gu Mengmeng was thinking about. The only thing he could do was to follow her wishes. Since she did not want to see Leah, then so be it. Elvis walked out of the cave and saw Leah standing at the border of his territory. He asked, "You're not coming in?" Lee's gaze was empty and distant. He smiled bitterly and replied, "This place is no longer a place that I can enter as I please." Aside from the topic, in order not to be stuck, there will be an update later to clarify what exactly was going on with Leah. Chapter 166. Elvis remained silent and did not reply. Leah took a deep breath and took the initiative to ask, "She doesn't want to see me?" Actually, Leah heard everything that Elvis said to Gu Mengmeng in the cave. He even heard her sobbing and shaking her head clearly. Elvis nodded his head slightly and pressed his lips into a straight line. But Leah smiled and said with bitterness and a tinge of relief, "She doesn't want to see me. Luckily, she doesn't want to see me." Elvis looked at Leah in confusion and did not say anything. He only used his gaze to ask for Leah's opinion. Leah heaved a long sigh of relief and said, She doesn't want to see me because she still hates me. Still hates me. At least it means that she has me in her heart. Elvis did not really understand Lee's logic, and only told him about Gu Mengmeng being soaked in cold water, and how he handled it. Leah nodded his head and said, "You handled it well. Before I came, I had already asked Bode to cook a pot of water shuttle, and added a lot of yellow roots. Sandy will send it over in a while. Coax Mengmeng to drink more." Elvis nodded his head in agreement and then looked at Leah. "Then you." Leah waved his hands and said, "The most important thing now is for you to mate with Mengmeng before winter. Only after you successfully become Mengmeng's first partner can I tell Mengmeng the truth and think of a way to ask for her forgiveness." Elvis asked, "Are you confident that she will forgive you?" Leah shook his head and smiled bitterly. "No, I'm just gambling. I'm gambling that in her heart, I'm more important than her principles." Elvis sighed and said, "Why did you choose Nina back then? If you choose Sandy, there's still someone who can help you when you explain to Xiaoming in the future." But Leah shook his head and said, "How can I let her lose her best friend at the same time when she loses her lover? She likes Sandy so much. It's always good to have Sandy accompany her when she's sad because of me." Elvis remained silent and stood at the same spot, not knowing what to say. But Leah used his chin to point at his leg and asked, "How did you explain your injury to Mengmeng?" Elvis's expression darkened and he said in a low voice, "She didn't ask, so I didn't explain." Leah patted Elvis's shoulder and said, "Bring out the aura you had when you fought with me that day. I did not hesitate to land myself in such a situation just to see you helpless in front of Mengmeng." Elvis was silent. He had nothing to say. Actually, he did not mind that he was not Gu Mengmeng's first partner, nor did he mind that Gu Mengmeng liked Leah more than him. He only wanted to stay by Gu Mengmeng's side to take care of her, protect her and watch over her. But Gu Mengmeng's insistence on maintaining monogamy had forced him into a dead end. He did not mind being neglected or being wronged, but leaving her and losing her was his bottom line. This was the only thing he could not agree to. So that night, he went to look for Leah and used the usual method of males in the beast world to decide who would protect Gu Mengmeng. He had won, but seeing how upset Gu Mengmeng was because of Lee's departure, Elvis had been asking himself for the past 2 days, was he wrong? Maybe he should not have won. Leah and Elvis had many years of friendship, fighting side by side and risking their lives so many times, so they had a deep understanding of each other. Even if Elvis did not say anything, Leah understood what he was thinking. "Don't feel guilty, losing to you was my own decision. We all know that this is the best choice, isn't it?" Aside from the topic, branches. Looking at Elvis carrying Gu Mengmeng off, the smile on Lee's face slowly froze. He frowned in disgust and ordered coldly, "Take your dirty hands off me." Nina, who was hugging Lee's waist and feeling pleased with herself, was stunned by Lee's roar. She looked up at Leah blankly, only to realize that his eyes were still staring at the direction Gu Mengmeng disappeared in, not even sparing her a glance. "If I hear you casually express your opinion in front of Mengmeng again, I don't mind the number of females in Saint Nazir becoming 3. As Leah said that, he took out a beast-skin rope from his waist and tied 2 strands of long hair behind his ears before folding it inwards. This was the hairstyle Mengmeng had praised. She said it looked good. "Leah, how can you speak to me like this? I'm the Nina who wants to mate with you." Nina shouted at the top of her lungs. "Mate?" Leah sneered. "Are you even worthy?" Chapter 167. Not long after Leah left, Sandy really carried a big pot of fish soup over. The smell of ginger could be smelled from afar. Elvis welcomed Sandy outside the cave and took the stone pot from her hands. He then invited, "Xiaoming is inside. Do you want to accompany her?" This was the first time Elvis invited another female into his cave, and he felt a little awkward. But for Gu Mengmeng, he would do anything he did not like. Sandy's heart was already on Gu Mengmeng, and she did not have the time to feel proud of Elvis's invitation. She just nodded and walked in without standing on ceremony. The moment she entered the cave, Sandy saw Gu Mengmeng curled up in a corner. Her chubby little face puffed up, and Sandy took a few steps forward to hug Gu Mengmeng in her arms. She imitated how she used to comfort herself when she was crying and patted her back lightly. Gu Mengmeng, I don't allow you to spoil yourself like this. Gu Mengmeng opened her red and swollen eyes, and saw that the person who came was Sandy. She wanted to smile so that Sandy would not worry, but the corners of her lips were too heavy. No matter how much strength she used, she could not even pull out a curve. Sandy cupped Gu Mengmeng's little face with both hands and looked at Gu Mengmeng seriously. If you want to cry, don't force yourself to smile. I will accompany you. When you are done crying, we will eat something delicious. Bode's culinary skills have improved a lot recently, and the food he makes is getting better and better. He cooked water shuttles today, and I specially brought them for you to eat. Once you are full, you will not feel uncomfortable anymore. Gu Mengmeng shook her head and leaned into Sandy's arms. She wrapped her arms around Sandy's waist and choked with sobs. I have no appetite. This was the first sentence Gu Mengmeng said after returning from the lake. Her hoarse and weak voice made Sandy hug Gu Mengmeng over and over again in heartache. She said with a sullen face, You don't even want to eat delicious food. Looks like you are really feeling terrible. Elvis felt suffocated. Gu Mengmeng's pitiful look made him feel as if his heart was pierced by an icicle. Every time his heart beat, the flesh that was stuck to the icicle would tear a little. The pain seeped into his bones and he did not want to live. Sandy's attention was completely on Gu Mengmeng, and she really did not have the mood to care about Elvis's life. She just hugged Gu Mengmeng and swayed her body gently, saying, Actually, it's not a big deal. No matter how outstanding Leah was, he was just a male. You're so beautiful. You'll definitely attract even more powerful males to pursue you at the beauty contest next spring. By then, we can choose someone better than Leah to piss him off. With that, Sandy suddenly tilted her head and looked at Elvis before continuing. Isn't Elvis here? Take Elvis first and mate with him after your estrus period ends. Then take Barit and Colin too. Take advantage of this winter to mate with them properly. It's best if you can get pregnant in winter. When the snow melts next year and Nina's stomach does not have any reaction, do you think Leah will regret it to death? Gu Mengmeng smiled bitterly. She thought to herself that Leah chose Nina because she was unwilling to mate with him. If she was willing. Gu Mengmeng's heart suddenly lit up. She sat up abruptly and grabbed onto Sandy's arm, saying, Leah, I want to see Leah. Sandy was confused by Gu Mengmeng's sudden change. She could only turn her head blankly to look at Elvis with a questioning gaze. Elvis's lips curved upwards but his brows were tightly furrowed. His eyes were filled with a depth that Gu Mengmeng could not understand or was unwilling to understand. He replied Gu Mengmeng with a single word of tenderness that could crush bones and blood. All right. Aside from the topic, thank you to the Tycoon Prideful Blood and Water Dragon from QQ Reading for your 1999 plus 99 reading points. It was Jeaner's first time seeing such a huge reward. She took the screenshot and showed off in the author's group. Thank you baby for satisfying my little vanity. Then this love breakup content won't take too long. It should be nearing the end. Babies, bear with it for a few more days. After I have comforted my Mengmeng, I will distribute meat to everyone. Please note to enter the group in advance. QQ group number 4927792773 My QQ is not a member, so the group I created could only accommodate 200 people. Now there are 100 plus. Chapter 168. Leah did not walk far, and just hit at the edge of Elvis's territory. From this distance, he could barely hear Gu Mengmeng's voice and occasionally smell her scent in the air. He was caressing the beast skin rope that Gu Mengmeng used to tie his hair. When he heard that Gu Mengmeng wanted to see him, he paused for a moment. Then he tried his best to control his urge to rush to her, and climbed down the tree slowly. He stood at the edge of Elvis's territory, and only stepped in after Elvis agreed to Gu Mengmeng's request. This was the first time he felt a sense of unfamiliarity and anticipation in this place that he had entered countless times. He did not know what Gu Mengmeng wanted to say to him, but to him now, it was good enough to hear her voice. According to the rules, without Elvis's permission, he could not enter the cave. So Leah stood at the entrance of the cave, and stared at the empty hole. He could clearly hear Elvis whispering to Gu Mengmeng, "He's here, I'll call him in." Gu Mengmeng held on to Elvis, her hands trembling uncontrollably. She was the one who had made up her mind to meet Leah. But when he really came, Gu Mengmeng started to feel guilty. What if she said she was willing to mate, but Leah still chose Nina? If that happened, she would not even have the last chance to fantasize. Elvis could not understand Gu Mengmeng's thoughts and just looked at her with a frown. "Leah, you're here?" Gu Mengmeng held onto Elvis's arm tightly and did not let him go out or Leah enter. Gu Mengmeng mustered her courage to ask after looking at Sandy, who had been guarding at the side. "Yes, I'm here." Lee's voice was trembling slightly, but his face was still calm. No one knew how much effort he had put in to make him appear effortless to others. If I'm willing to mate with you, will you return to my side?" Gu Mengmeng's eyes were fixed on the entrance of the cave. Even though it was impossible for her to see Lee's expression and state, she was still staring at the entrance of the cave with her heart in her throat. She swore that she was not even this nervous on the day the results of the college entrance examinations were released. Leah remained silent. Gu Mengmeng was willing to mate with him. This news made him extremely happy, but it also made him feel twice as pressured, suffocating him. "Mengmeng." Lee's voice was low and hoarse. At this moment, when no one was looking, he kept his elegant smile for the first time. He furrowed his brows and replied solemnly, "I can die protecting you on the battlefield, but I don't want to see you suffer any harm before I die." Gu Mengmeng was taken aback. She did not understand what Leah meant. She instinctively looked at Elvis, only to realize that he was frowning in silence. She then turned to look at Sandy, but Sandy just patted her hand, gesturing for her to continue listening to Leah. Lee's hearing was very sensitive. He could clearly sense Gu Mengmeng's condition in the cave, so he paused for a while to give her sufficient time to think and calm down. After Gu Mengmeng's breathing and heartbeat had stabilized, Leah then continued, "The beast world is very dangerous. I can't protect you alone. If you care about me, please accept the rules of the beast world and build a strong family, so that I have family members that I can trust, and not have to worry about my partner getting hurt before I die, or having no one to take care of him after I die." Aside from the topic, thank you to Shaoxiang Academy's Baby Mao 061028 and Another Me for their 5-star reviews. And thank you to QQ Reading Baby Feda Hire for her tip. As for the little baddies who commented that Leah was defiled by Nina a few days ago, so Leah is a scumbag, please face the wall. Chapter 169. No matter how dumb Gu Mengmeng was, she understood something by now. She let go of Elvis's arm, looked up at Elvis's eyes and asked, "A powerful family, a reliable family member. Who is it?" Leah was outside the cave and could not see Gu Mengmeng's actions. He could only hear from her voice that Gu Mengmeng's emotions were not quite right, but he still answered, "Elvis is the strongest male in Saint Nazaire. He had already advanced to a 3rd-level beast a long time ago, but he could not advance because he did not have the support of the mating contract. I believe as long as you mate with him, he will advance to the 4th level in no time. As long as he successfully advances." Gu Mengmeng laughed coldly, interrupting Lee's words. She seemed to have lost all her energy and sat down on her own legs weakly. She looked down at her own fingers and muttered, "So in your eyes, I am just a tool for you to advance." Lee's heart skipped a beat, and he instantly understood what made him feel uneasy just now. His Gu Mengmeng had misunderstood him. Leah wanted to explain, but Gu Mengmeng beat him to it and said, "After I mate with Elvis, he will become extremely powerful. If he is so powerful that he can deal with all the dangers in the beast world that you mentioned, then it will be enough for me to have him alone. Why should I accept the rules of the beast world? If he is still not strong enough to deal with these dangers after mating with me." A family. How many partners do you need to have before it can be called a family? 3? 5? 10? 100? Gu Mengmeng took a deep breath and stood up abruptly, saying to the outside of the cave, "Leave, I don't want to see you anymore." Lee's body stiffened. He used all his strength, but realized that he could not even control his fingertips. He lost Gu Mengmeng just like that? Wasn't it something that could be resolved by tolerating, waiting, coaxing, and letting her scold him for a while? In her heart, he was ultimately just like that. Leah wanted to rush in and explain to Gu Mengmeng. He had no time to care about the future, what was right or wrong, what was life or death. He just wanted to hug his Gu Mengmeng in his arms, watch her laugh, play with her, and hear her call him Daddy Leah. Elvis appeared at the entrance of the cave and grabbed onto Lee's shoulder. His expression was solemn and gloomy. His voice was not loud, but it was unquestionable. She said she won't see you and asked you to leave. Leah grabbed Elvis's wrist and said, I want to see her. He turned around and retracted his hand. At the same time, his other hand was already strangling Lee's neck. Unless she is willing, or I die. Leah was taken aback. After a while, he looked at Elvis with empty eyes and asked, that day during the duel, if I didn't admit defeat, would you really bite me to death? Even at the cost of a leg? Elvis remained silent for a moment before nodding his head. Yes, I will. Leah frowned and asked, have you ever thought about what would happen to Saint Nazir if I die and you become a crippled beast? Elvis remained silent for a long time. Then he raised his head and looked back at Ray's eyes with determination. I'm not as smart as you. I can't think of so many things at the same time. I only know that I cannot hand Meng Meng over to you. Leah was shocked and asked, why? Elvis said in a faint voice. Do you still remember when you saved Xiao Meng from Quentin? Aside from the topic, thank you QQ Reading Baby Pippiu for your tips. Also, how much did the babies remember about Leah saving Gu Mengmeng from Quentin? Did anyone find anything wrong with this matter? Actually, I've been burying this topic since then. But I don't know if I buried it too deeply, or you guys were so distracted by Lee's flirting that you didn't notice. Also, Elvis and Gu Mengmeng's mating had been brought forward. According to the standards, the mating process would definitely not pass, so, you guys understand. Chapter 170. Leah nodded his head in confusion, indicating that he remembered. Elvis continued, with your abilities, you should have arrived at the scene a long time ago, right? Lee's heart skipped a beat as he vaguely understood what Elvis meant. Elvis did not expect Lee's reply and just continued. I heard from Xiao Meng that you descended from the sky when she was about to be choked to death by Quentin. You did not come as a bird. The fact that you descended from the sky meant that you had arrived a long time ago. But you did not appear and watch Quentin hurt Xiao Meng, right? Leah let go of the hand that he was competing with Elvis and staggered 2 steps backwards, not saying a word. Elvis did not force him to answer and just said calmly, you feel that you are not as important as the principles that she insists on in Xiao Meng's heart. But in your heart, isn't Xiao Meng also not as important as Saint Nazir? Back then, in order to teach her a lesson so that she would not dare to step out of Saint Nazir easily, you allowed Quentin to hurt her. In the battle with me, you also considered Saint Nazir's future, so you did not use your full strength. In the end, you even thought of a way to pretend to mate with Nina to make Xiao Meng sad. In your heart, other than her identity as the messenger of the beast deity and being able to bring a subversive power to Saint Nazir, what else does she have in your heart? Leah was speechless. As intelligent as he was, there was actually a day that he would be speechless after being questioned by Elvis. I cannot hand Xiao Meng over to someone who would compare her on a scale. Elvis took a step back and blocked the entrance of the cave steadily. Leah did not rush forward again, and just lowered his head to look at his own shadow. He asked as if he was talking to himself. Have you told Meng Meng about this? Elvis shook his head and said, I don't want to say anything that will make Xiao Meng sad. Leah smiled bitterly and nodded his head. Yeah, with Elvis's character. How would he do something like bad-mouthing others behind their backs? Leah was very clear that his decision back then was rational and correct. In order to keep Gu Mengmeng and Saint Nazir, he had to first seal the news of her being the messenger of the beast deity within the tribe. The less contact she had with the outside world, the longer this news could be sealed. Then, the chances of Elvis and him fighting to mate with Gu Mengmeng, and even allowing her to give birth to her first child during this period would be relatively higher. So he silently allowed Barit to let Gu Mengmeng out of Saint Nazir. He thought that with his protection in the dark, everything would be under control. Or perhaps earlier on, he had already deduced all of this countless times. He never told anyone other than Elvis that Saint Nazir might get the messenger of the beast deity in the future. He allowed Nina to be unruly, willful, arrogant and despotic. Even the title of the first beauty of Saint Nazir was given to Nina by him. So when the messenger of the beast deity arrived, Nina, who was used to being arrogant and willful, would definitely cause trouble. And this was the opportunity he wanted. Of course, even without Nina, he would still train a female similar to Nina himself. It could be Sandy, or it could be Maya. However, Nina's request saved him a lot of trouble, because those who had done this kind of thing once would be more adept at it. The truth proved that all of Lee's deductions were correct. Nina stirred up a conflict as he expected, Quentin laid his hands on females as he expected, and he played the role of a hero in the face of danger as he expected. But he did not expect that the messenger of the beast deity was Gu Meng Meng, a person who made his heart beat again. Aside from the topic, after receiving the notification from the editor, QQ Bookstore had arranged for the second round of PK. I did not even know if I passed the first round of PK. I, who received the notification directly, was also dumbfounded. The editor requested for a guarantee of 5 chapters during the 2P period. So my babies, do you know what to do? Bookstore's collection point and free recommendation tickets every day. Remember, it's every day. Please leave comments and gifts between today and Friday. Chapter 171. Gu Meng Meng used 7 days to recuperate. On the morning of the 8th day, the moment she opened her eyes, Gu Meng Meng forced herself to accept reality. Wasn't it just loving the wrong person? Crying for 7 days was already a good for nothing. It was not Gu Meng Meng's style to risk her life for a man who treated her as a tool. Clenching her teeth, Gu Meng Meng kept repeating in her heart, "I'm fine. I don't care. I can live a good life." Elvis noticed Gu Meng Meng's abnormality the moment he opened his eyes. This change was infinitely close to his ideal, but why was there a dull pain in his chest? Elvis hugged Gu Meng Meng's waist lightly, and unknowingly pulled her into his arms again. He weighed her in his hands. She had slimmed down again. He frowned but did not know how to comfort her. "Elvis, can you bring me to the lake where we first met?" Gu Meng Meng opened her mouth. Elvis's expression froze and his brows formed a dead knot. He asked in a low voice, "Are you going to sink yourself to the bottom of the lake again?" Gu Meng Meng shook her head and smiled. "I won't be stupid for a man twice." Elvis looked at Gu Meng Meng doubtfully, not moving or saying a word. Gu Meng Meng saw that her credibility seemed to have been ruined by Elvis. She laughed at herself and said, "The last time I jumped into the lake, it was not to drown myself. I was just thinking that since I came from that lake, maybe I can go back from that lake." But reality proved that this idea was not reliable. That lake seemed to be a one-way entrance. To go back, I might have to find another exit. "Go back." Elvis repeated Gu Meng Meng's words in a low voice. But he only said one word before he felt as if someone was strangling his throat. Not to mention repeating Gu Meng Meng's words, even his breathing was not smooth. Gu Meng Meng was trying her best to pull herself out from her heartbroken emotions. She had already used up a lot of energy to stop herself from crying. She really did not have the mood to figure out Elvis's current thoughts. Gu Meng Meng looked down and twisted her fingers nonchalantly. "Since I can't go back for now, I have to think of a way to live more comfortably. Roasting fish and meat every day is not a solution. Even if I don't get sick of it, my body can't take it." Elvis recalled that the lake was very special because he met Gu Meng Meng there. But other than that, Elvis really could not think of anything else in the lake. Gu Meng Meng could not help but find it funny when she saw Elvis thinking so hard. This kind of brainstorming work was really not suitable for him. Every time he was thinking about a problem, his brows would furrow into a dead knot. Gu Meng Meng placed her little hand on Elvis's brows and said patiently, "I need to ingest salt to maintain my health. In the past few days, I had been feeling weak, which was a sign of a lack of salt. If I don't take in more salt, my condition will worsen, and I won't be able to survive this winter." Elvis immediately tensed up upon hearing that. Gu Mingming patted Elvis's shoulder and gestured for him to relax. Then she said, "When I jumped into the lake previously, I accidentally realized that the lake water was salty. I suspect that it was a salt lake. Bring me there to take a look. If that's really the case, then I can be saved." Elvis still had a lingering fear towards Gu Mingming's sudden jump into the lake, and the words she said to him before jumping into the lake. Elvis did not dare to take the risk of bringing her closer to that place, especially after knowing that it could be a passage for her to return to the other world. He could not let her near that place. So Elvis asked cautiously, "What does salt look like? Tell me, I'll go get it for you." Aside from the topic, trying to act pitiful, Susu had caught a cold. To someone who did not have a stockpile of chapters, the sudden notification of adding chapters was a huge blow. But for the sake of our Gu Mingming's better development, Susu had been pouring cup after cup of coffee into her stomach, trying her best to stay awake, so that she could write more chapters for her babies. "For the sake of my hard work, can you please give me your recommendation tickets every day?" Chapter 172. Gu Mingming raised her brows and looked at Elvis, asking, "Why? Are you planning to imprison me and not let me leave this cave for the rest of my life?" Elvis was taken aback by Gu Mingming's words and shook his head instinctively. Gu Mingming then smiled. "Then it's settled. I promise I won't jump into the lake this time. I didn't have the experience last time and didn't know the water was so cold. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have had the guts to jump in." That was the truth. The water was still warm when Gu Mingming came, but after a few days, it had become extremely cold. It could be seen that winter was indeed coming, and there seemed to be no transition period. Elvis could not reject Gu Mingming in the end, but he was much more cautious this time. He carried Gu Mingming in his arms and did not let her leave his side. Gu Mingming was also happy to be at ease. Without shoes, the ground was cold and hard, and moreover, she really did not want to jump into the lake. Being hugged by Elvis to keep her warm was pretty good. When they reached the lakeside again, Gu Mingming's eyes lit up immediately. F*******. This was her third time here. Why did she not realize that this was a salt lake the previous 2 times? Large pieces of salt crystals were hanging on the rock wall by the lakeside, but she did not realize it previously? Gu Mingming was extremely excited, pointing at a piece nearer to her. "Elvis, hurry, go there. I want that white one." Seeing that Gu Mingming was interested in things other than Leah, Elvis felt slightly more at ease. Looking at the direction Gu Mingming was pointing at, he nodded his head, carrying Gu Mingming, and stepped on the huge rocks by the lakeside. With a few leaps, he reached the rock wall. He held on to Gu Mingming with one hand and held on to the protruding part of the rock wall with the other, hanging steadily in mid-air. Gu Mingming broke off a small piece of salt crystal and licked it with her little tongue. A huge smile bloomed on Gu Mingming's face. That's right, it was what she wanted. Gu Mingming danced with joy, using all her strength to break off a large piece and hugged it in her arms. She wanted to take more, but her hands could only hold too little now. If she used too much strength, there would be nothing left after the salt crystal was crushed. Looking at Gu Mingming's face that was wrinkled like a bun, Elvis asked in confusion, "What's wrong? Is it not what you want?" Gu Mingming shook her head and said, "This is what I want, but I can only take this much." Elvis looked at the large piece of what she called salt in her hands. It was about the size of a rabbit. If it was cooked, it was indeed a little too little. It was rare that Gu Mingming was in the mood and had an appetite, so Elvis naturally would not disappoint her. He said, "It's all right, let's take these back first. I'll help you get them later." Gu Mingming shook her head and said, "It's quite a long journey from here. Let's get enough in one go, so that we don't have to run back and forth." Elvis nodded. To him, whatever Gu Mingming said was right, so he said, "Then break off a few more and throw them on the shore. I will take them later." Gu Mingming's lips twitched. Throw it to the shore? If that happened, it would be smashed into pieces. If it got wet, it would be impossible to pick it up even if he wanted to. He knew that he was here to look for salt, but why didn't he think of bringing a piece of animal skin with him when he left? "I'm so stupid." "Beast skin? Elvis's eyes lit up and he said to Gu Mengmeng, "Beast skin, I brought it." Aside from the topic, hoeing the crops in the middle of the afternoon, stockpiling the manuscript today. The sun sets on the mountain in the morning, stockpiling the manuscript today. Bright moonlight in front of my bed, stockpiling the manuscript today. Not knowing where the human face is gone. I must stockpile the manuscript today. An ancient poem that did not rhyme at all proved that the author had gone crazy. Chapter 173. Gu Mingming blinked her big innocent eyes at Elvis, sizing him up from head to toe. Damn it, he did not have anything on him other than that beast skin dress. Did he bring beast skin? Where did he hide it? Wait a minute. A bomb exploded in Gu Mingming's mind. Then she looked at Elvis's beast skin dress with a stiff face. F*******. Leader, you can't be so hardcore, right? Damn it, I'm bringing this salt back to eat. But you want me to use your beast skin dress that does not contain any additives to wrap a certain important part of my body? How can I eat it when I go back to cook? Gu Mingming shook her head like a rattledrum. No, I can't use your beast skin dress. I will be traumatized by the salt. Elvis smiled dotingly. It's all right, after we get the salt, I'll turn into my original form and carry you back. I won't let anyone see my body. Gu Mingming was speechless, holding her forehead. That's not the problem, all right? Elvis did not understand, frowning slightly. Gu Mingming hugged the salt too tightly. Some of it had already crumbled in her hands. Gu Mingming looked at the crumbled salt in her hands and hurriedly said, "Let's go down first. I'll think of another way." Without a word, Elvis kicked off with force and jumped up like he was stepping on a spring bed. After a few consecutive jumps, he landed steadily at a distance of 1 meter away from the lake. He placed Gu Mingming down carefully and held onto her shoulders, saying, "Wait for me here, I'll help you get some more." Gu Mingming's body trembled as she looked at Elvis. "Wait for me here, I'll go get more for you." Gu Mingming nodded. She was very clear that with her small body, she would only be a burden if she went over, so she might as well let Elvis handle it. Elvis held onto Gu Mingming's shoulders tighter, staring into her eyes. "Promise me, don't go near the lake." Gu Mingming knew that Elvis was scared by her previously, so she smiled. "Don't worry, I treasure my life more than anyone else. I don't have any inclination to commit suicide or harm myself." Elvis was still not at ease, but this was the first time Gu Mingming was interested in something in the past few days. He could see that she was trying her best to divert her attention with other things, so that she would not have time to think about Leah. As long as she could not be sad, he was willing to do all the things for her. As Elvis walked towards the cliff by the lake, he kept an eye on Gu Mingming's movements. Seeing that she only plucked a few big leaves strenuously at the side, and then started to wrap the salt carefully, he then leaped up the cliff with a peace of mind. Not long after, Elvis had already made more than 10 trips. Gu Mingming looked at the small mountain of salt crystals in front of her, and smiled from the bottom of her heart for the first time in a few days. Together with Elvis, she used leaves to wrap the salt, then tied them up with thinner vines and hung them around Elvis's neck like he was wearing a scarf. Elvis hung a bag of salt around his neck, and carried a smaller Gu Mingming in his arms. It felt like a boss of a grocery store bringing his daughter home to buy groceries. Gu Mingming could not help but laugh at this thought. She weighed the sizable amount of salt in her hands, and suddenly felt like she was a nouveau riche who suddenly had a huge sum of money. Elvis did not know what these white crystals were used for, but looking at Gu Mingming's smile, he felt that these crystals were really precious. He wanted to collect all the crystals by the lake for her. As long as she could smile like this, it would be enough. Aside from the topic, I saw that some little babies left messages saying that their messages had been deleted. Susu was really innocent in this matter. As a child raised by a stepmother who did not even have a backer in the bookstore, the messages she posted in the QQ group had been deleted a few times. Chapter 174. Elvis called Sandy over to accompany Gu Mingming while he returned to the lakeside, wanting to help Gu Mingming get more salt crystals. But sometimes, When Elvis appeared in front of Gu Mengmeng with his head hung low like a child who had done something wrong, Gu Mengmeng deeply experienced for the first time in her life what was called a pig teammate. Looking at Elvis's dejected look, Gu Mengmeng felt like laughing for some reason. She really wanted to ask, "Elvis, are you actually a pig in wolf skin?" "Xiaomeng, don't be angry. I know where to find the salt crystals you want. Although it's a little far, I can definitely bring a lot of them back for you." Gu Mengmeng waved her hands and said, "Tell me first, how many salt crystals did you get into the water from the lakeside?" Elvis cleared his throat and used his hands to form a shape about the size of a rice bowl. He then turned his head away, not daring to look at Gu Mengmeng in the eyes. Gu Mengmeng's lips curled to one side. This Elvis was really not good at lying. If it was just this little bit, why would he be so nervous? Gu Mengmeng did not expose him, nor did she reply. She just crossed her arms in front of her chest and looked at Elvis with her chin raised. Then, she saw Elvis quietly expand the area between his hands. From the size of a bowl, it became the size of a wash basin. He then kept glancing at Gu Mengmeng from the corner of his eyes. He looked like a husky that had torn down a house. Gu Mengmeng facepalmed. She no longer doubted that huskies and wolves were close relatives. Gu Mengmeng patted Elvis's shoulder and said, "You have successfully lowered the overall intelligence level of the wolf tribe. If you meet other wolves in the future, hide a little. I'm afraid they will want to bite you to death." Elvis did not really understand Gu Mengmeng's words. After all, he had never seen a wolf tribe that could defeat him, but he would just treat it as a word of concern. Elvis thought about it and chuckled. He then asked in a probing manner, "About the salt crystals, you're not angry?" Gu Mengmeng shook her head and said, "I think the salt crystals there are enough to last our entire tribe for 2 to 3 years. It won't affect you much if you get rid of them. Moreover, even if there aren't any salt crystals, I have a way to extract them from the lake. It's just that using ready-made salt crystals would save me a lot of trouble." Elvis then heaved a sigh of relief and understood why Gu Mengmeng insisted on going over by herself in the morning. Elvis's ears twitched as he heard someone coming from the cave. He didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Looking at Gu Mengmeng, Elvis said, "Then you and Sandy can play first. I will go out for a while and be back soon." Gu Mengmeng did not take it to heart. After all, Elvis was the leader of the tribe. He could not possibly revolve around her every day, right? She nodded and continued to help Sandy spread the salt evenly on the fish that Bode had prepared. Then they strung the fish with vines one by one. 10 fish were strung on one vine and placed at the side. Because the fish were too fat, it was impossible for the 2 females to lift them up. Elvis walked out of the cave and saw that it was indeed Leah. "She's much better today." Elvis did not raise any questions and just stated it directly. Lee's expression was indifferent. Even though he tried very hard to maintain his usual smile, his sunken eye sockets and haggard face revealed his torment. With regards to the messenger of the beast deity, all his plans were correct, but there was a very important premise, and that was that he must never truly fall in love with this messenger of the beast deity. But this important premise had already been shattered by Gu Mengmeng's daddy Leah, when he was defenseless. Aside from the topic, regarding the issue of giving Gu Mengmeng a cheat, sometimes I really don't know what everyone's standards are. My setting is that Gu Mengmeng is an ordinary first-year female student who accidentally transmigrated. So in the novel, I tried my best to avoid using an unrealistic cheat, referring to the early stages. But there were still people who told me that Gu Mengmeng's protagonist aura was too strong, as if she did not need to learn anything. And there were also some readers who told me that Gu Mengmeng was too weak. Why did she not use the cheat? Alright, what I want to say is that I will definitely activate my gold finger, but I won't activate it for no reason. Let me reveal a small clue. The activation of the cheat is related to mating. Then it's almost time for mating, probably. Who knows how many more days? Chapter 175. Leah did not reply. He just passed the bag of leaves tied by a bunch of vines to Elvis, then passed a lot of dried ginger to Elvis, saying, "She always likes some strange things that no one would pick up even if they were thrown on the ground, but she always treats them like treasures. Elvis took over the things from Lee's hands, placed it next to his nose and sniffed it. Then he knew that the bag of leaves contained salt crystals. Looking at the method of wrapping it, it was clearly the same as Gu Mingming's. That meant that when they went to the lake to retrieve the salt crystals in the morning, Leah was also there, but he did not realize it. Elvis could now understand what Leah meant when he said, "The beast world is so dangerous. A male cannot protect Gu Mingming." If the one following him today was not Leah, but someone else, then Elvis did not voice out his worries. He just asked, "Should I tell her? Did you send it over?" Leah shook his head, smiling bitterly. "Based on her character, if she knew that I brought it over, I'm afraid she would not accept it." Elvis was silent. He could not deny it. Leah understood Gu Mingming much more thoroughly than him. Most of the time he did not know what Gu Mingming was thinking about. He could only do as she said, but Leah could see through her thoughts before she opened her mouth. Perhaps this was the reason why he lost to Leah in Xiaoming's heart. Elvis nodded, agreeing to it, then carried the things and turned to enter the cave. Leah raised his hand, wanting to stop Elvis, but when the words were at the tip of his tongue, he realized that he did not have the right to instruct him. Looking at his blood-stained and dirty fingers from digging the yellow roots all over the mountain, Leah smiled bitterly, turning to walk back into the mountain. As long as she was happy, so what if he dug his hands till they were mush? Elvis returned to the cave, piling the things that Leah brought over at the side, together with the salt crystal bags they brought back in the morning. Then he sat beside Gu Mingming, watching her and Sandy string up the fishes while chatting and laughing. Bode had brought a total of over 30 fishes, and they were all cleaned, so it was not too strenuous to string them up. After Gu Mingming settled everything, she patted Elvis's arm and asked, "In your territory, would there be wild animals that would steal our food?" Elvis shook his head. The pressure of the orcs is enough to intimidate normal wild animals. They would not dare to go near the tribe. Gu Mingming nodded, then asked again, "Would there be other orcs that would steal of our food?" Elvis was taken aback for a moment. Then he smiled and rubbed Gu Mingming's furry little head. "The males of Saint Nazir will not snatch the food of their own females. As for the males from other clans, unless they destroy the entire Saint Nazir, they should not be able to enter this cave to take your water shuttle." Don't worry. Nobody knew what Gu Mingming was doing. Sandy helped out for half a day, only thinking that it was a new game that Gu Mingming had invented. After all, in this boring era, Sandy was tired of throwing a stone and picking it up after playing it for a few years. Compared to those, this game of stringing up the water shuttles was already considered much more fun. Digression. Chapter 176. How long will this take? Sandy tilted her head and asked. Gu Mingming smacked her lips and said, "I don't know either, it depends on the air-drying situation." Sandy did not know what air-drying situation was, but it looked like it would take a long time, so she did not have the desire to continue waiting. She pulled Gu Mingming and said, "Our water shuttles are all used up. Why don't we ask Bode and the rest to get some more, and we can continue to wear them?" Gu Mingming shook her head and rejected Sandy's suggestion. She pointed at the 30 big fishes hanging on the tree and said, "Although this is delicious, we can't just eat it for the entire winter." Sandy was stunned and her clear big eyes were instantly filled with the colors of a fangirl. Her saliva was about to drip down uncontrollably. She pulled Gu Mingming's arm and pointed at the fish on the tree excitedly, asking, "Edible? Edible?" Gu Mingming smiled and nodded. "Yeah, this will not go bad easily after being dried in the shade. Before winter, ask Bode to take 2 skewers and leave 1 for me. It's quite enjoyable to eat fish occasionally during winter." Elvis's expression was rather solemn. He took a step forward and held onto Gu Mingming's shoulders. Accommodating her height, he looked into her eyes and asked, "As long as we hang it like this, the food won't go bad?" Gu Mingming smiled and said, "Of course not, it has to be marinated with salt first and then dried in the shade. Although it's not as effective as preservatives, but if it's like what you said when the snow seals the mountain during winter, and we can't even leave the cave, then it's like a natural refrigerator. If we handle it this way, it shouldn't be a problem to store it for the entire winter." Elvis was overjoyed. He carried Gu Mengmeng and howled at the sky. Gu Mengmeng did not know what message he was sending. She only knew that after a while, all the males in the tribe gathered in front of Elvis's cave and looked at Gu Mengmeng with sparkling eyes. Xiaomeng, what kind of food can be stored using this method? Can you tell everyone? Elvis carried Gu Mengmeng so that she would not be drowned in the crowd of tall males. And males had very sensitive ears. Even if Gu Mengmeng's voice was not as loud as Elvis's, they could still hear her clearly. Ever since Gu Mengmeng broke up with her boyfriend, she had almost never shown her face in front of the public. This long-lost public gaze still made her feel a little awkward. She instinctively hid in Elvis's arms and revealed half of her face, saying, "Any normal food is fine, but I have never pickled those tigers and leopards that you guys usually eat. I'm not sure, but in theory it should be fine." Elvis shook his head and said, "I'm not sure, but in theory it should be fine." The moment Gu Mengmeng finished speaking, a deafening cheer erupted from the beast horde. No matter how many times she had heard it, the sight of hundreds of beasts roaring at the sky still gave Gu Mengmeng a fright. Shrinking into Elvis's arms, Gu Mengmeng was like a frightened kitten. She was protected gently by Elvis as he patted her back slowly. After the males roared, they scattered in all directions to search for food that they could use. At this moment, a familiar person walked in front of Gu Mengmeng slowly. He smiled bashfully and raised his hand, saying, "Long time no see, Gu Mengmeng." Gu Mengmeng then noticed Barit. The last time she saw him was at the platform of the deity's punishment. Chapter 177. Barit clenched his fists and arched his arms, his firm muscles bulging. He displayed his masculine image perfectly, just like a walking hormone. Gu Mengmeng nodded and said, "Looks good, then I'm relieved. Hurry and go look for prey with the rest. If you're late, they'll snatch it all away." Barit was not in a hurry. He stood at the same spot and asked Gu Mengmeng, "You saved me on the platform of the deity's punishment. To repay you, I'll be responsible for your food this winter. What do you like to eat? Tell me, I'll prepare it for you." This matter. It was Li's suggestion. And at that time, she had not lost Leah yet. Gu Mengmeng could not maintain the smile on her face, and her nose felt sour. Gu Mengmeng despised herself for being so useless in her heart. She rubbed her nose and pretended to think, lifting her little face. She rolled her eyes to get rid of the mist in her eyes and forced herself to smile and answer, "Actually, there's no need. You helped me and I helped you, so we're even now. Elvis will help me prepare my food. You just have to take care of yourself." Barit looked at Elvis, his gaze filled with sincerity and determination, saying, "Elvis, please let me enter your cave this winter." Elvis frowned and remained silent for a moment before saying, "I'll prepare sufficient food for Xiaomeng. And she won't agree to it." Barit looked at Gu Mengmeng, then back at Elvis, saying, "Leader, please allow me to enter your cave this winter." Elvis frowned and squinted his eyes at Barit, saying, "Are you reminding me not to forget myself and my identity?" Barit remained silent, neither admitting nor denying it. Elvis's lips curled up and he tilted his neck to both sides, looking like he was warming up. Gu Mengmeng completely did not understand what they were talking about, but the smell of gunpowder was too strong. No matter how slow she was, it was impossible for her not to sense it. Barit had just come down from the platform of the deity's punishment a few days ago. A 3-day trip outside the gates of hell was not a joke. Elvis also injured his leg for some reason previously. Why were the two disabled patients still so angry? Gu Mengmeng patted Elvis's shoulder, attracting his attention to her. She then smiled lightly, saying, "Can you bring me around? I don't want to eat meat all winter. I'll get sick of it." Elvis glanced at Barit from the corner of his eyes, and did not say anything, only nodding his head. Gu Mengmeng then turned to Barit and said, "In the past, I didn't understand the rules of the beast world, and thought that this place was the same as our world, where men and women could be friends. But now I knew that apart from mating, it was impossible for a male and a female to coexist. I don't want to find a partner here, so don't waste your time on me. Go prepare your own food and don't come looking for me again." After Gu Mengmeng finished speaking, she wrapped her arms around Elvis's neck, signaling him to leave. Elvis did not stay for a second longer as he carried Gu Mengmeng out of the tribe. Barit was not dejected by Gu Mengmeng's words. He knew about Li's situation. Although he could not understand Gu Mengmeng's view on love, he would not try to change it. He was different from Leah. Mating with Gu Mengmeng was his dream, but he did not dare to hope that it would come true. As long as he could protect her from afar and help her with some trivial matters, he would be satisfied. So he maintained a certain distance and followed behind Elvis silently. There was no disappointment, no hesitation, no doubt, only a determined gaze and a primitive instinct to be loyal to himself. Aside from the topic. Chapter 178. Elvis knew that Barit was following behind him, but he did not expose or stop him. It was always better to have one more person protecting Gu Mengmeng. If she met with an extremely serious danger, it would be so lucky to have a reliable person to bring Gu Mengmeng away when she was fighting for her life. Gu Mengmeng did not have sharp senses like Elvis, so she just nestled in Elvis's arms and looked around. Sometimes, she asked Elvis to head east, and at other times she wandered around aimlessly. Elvis did not feel annoyed, and let her run around the mountain freely. Actually, there seemed to be quite a lot of edible things here, but Gu Mengmeng did not know much, so she did not dare to try. Until she found a familiar sea of flowers. Potato blossoms. Who said that watching Korean dramas was useless? Gu Mengmeng had seen this kind of flower in a Korean drama, The Best Love, a long time ago. It was probably because the female lead promised to make curry for the male lead, but she forgot why she did not come. The potato that the male lead bought had already sprouted, and in the end, only a long green bud grew out, but it did not bloom. Until one day, the male lead saw a painting of a potato field, and the field was filled with such buds. An old man told the male lead that potatoes looked like this when they bloomed. The male lead suddenly realized that the potato in his house had bloomed long ago. And then he ran off to look for the female lead in a melodramatic manner, but he could not remember it clearly. Gu Mengmeng only remembered complaining to her roommates about this point. Who the hell would hang a painting of a potato field as a decoration? It was also because this point was too shocking, so she remembered this scene especially clearly. It was just that Gu Mengmeng, who was hugging a watermelon and lying on the sofa to watch dramas, really did not expect that this point would actually improve her meals one day in the future. Gu Mengmeng patted Elvis's shoulder excitedly. That. With the previous experience with the salt crystals, Elvis was very careful this time. He did not know what Gu Mengmeng wanted these grasses for, but his usual principle was, don't ask, just do it. So Elvis carefully walked to the middle of the potato blossoms, then asked, can I just bring these grasses back? Can I just pluck them out? Gu Mengmeng stretched out her index finger and shook it in front of Elvis like a pendulum. She made a no expression and said, I don't want this grass, I want the thing underneath it. Elvis gently pushed the grass aside and realized that there was only soil underneath. What did Gu Mengmeng want the soil for? Could it be that dirt could be eaten? Gu Mengmeng patted Elvis's arm, gesturing for him to put her down. Elvis did as she was told. Gu Mengmeng rolled up her sleeves and separated her legs to shoulder width. She held onto a potato pudding with both hands and pulled it up with all her might. *CKme. The skin on his hand was torn, so painful. Gu Mengmeng looked at Elvis with her bloodshot hands, tears welling up in her eyes due to the pain in her palms. Her pitiful look melted Elvis's heart. He pulled Gu Mengmeng into his arms and looked at the wound on her palms. The wound was not deep, but to Elvis, it was a ghastly sight. Elvis held Gu Mengmeng's little hand gently and brought it to his lips. Then, he actually stuck out his tongue and started to lick Gu Mengmeng's palm carefully. A wave of numbness spread from Gu Mengmeng's palm to every corner of her body. Gu Mengmeng stared in bewilderment and stuttered, What are you doing? Aside from the topic. Thank you QQ Reader Dream for your tips and concern. I will take care of my body. The all-purpose plain water was already prepared and he was drinking it every day. Chapter 179. Elvis did not answer Gu Mingming's question, and just focused on licking her little hand, until he licked every single scar clean. He then placed her little hand by his lips reluctantly and kissed it. Only then did he answer. This way the wounds won't get inflamed and will heal faster. Gu Mingming's eyes widened. Gu Mingming's face was flushed red and she could not say a word. Previously, Leah had also licked the blood from her nose, but as the distance was too close, she could not see anything clearly and the entire process was transmitted through her skin. But it was different this time. When Elvis was licking her little hand, she maintained a VVIP 3D perspective and watched as Elvis's tongue licked her little hand over and over again, as if she was watching a live broadcast. Who could understand the feeling of touching an electric switch for 5 minutes? Elvis looked at Gu Mingming's flushed face and recalled the scene when Leah hugged her in the stream. That day, he watched everything quietly from afar and tried his best to control himself from rushing over. Today, he finally had such a chance to taste her wonderful taste. Although they did not have a proper title, she could only rely on him, trust him and let him take care of her. This was enough happiness. Elvis kissed Gu Mingming's little face, and then placed her down on a smooth big rock for her to sit properly. Then he pointed at the grass that Gu Mingming wanted to pluck but did not manage to. Just pluck it up? Gu Mingming nodded her head blankly. She had not recovered from Elvis's actions just now. Now, as long as Elvis looked at her, she would feel her face burning, and she did not know where to place her hands. Elvis liked Gu Mingming's childish look. Did it mean that she finally saw him as an ordinary male when she was shy because of his actions? Elvis was in a good mood and could do his work with ease. He grabbed the handful of grass and pulled out a bunch of potatoes that were buried underground without much effort. Elvis looked at the string of black and swarthy things in shock. He placed it at the tip of his nose and sniffed it. It smelled like dirt. Puzzled, he brought the string of things in front of Gu Mingming and asked, "The thing below you mentioned is this?" Gu Mingming was still in a daze until Elvis patted her head lightly. She then snapped back to reality. Yes, that's it. This is called potato. It's a divine dish that goes with everything. It's delicious and can help with hunger. Most importantly, it's easy to store. You can just pile it up in the cave, and it won't go bad easily. Elvis looked at the fist-sized fruit skeptically. He casually plucked one off and threw it into his mouth without even washing it. He chewed on it with a few crunching sounds. Along with Elvis's twisted expression, Gu Mingming's laughter reverberated throughout the entire sea of flowers. Ha ha. Hurry up and show your true form. You're a husky, aren't you? How can a wolf be as stupid as you? Ha ha ha. I'm dying of laughter. Gu Mingming clutched her stomach and rolled around in laughter. Seeing her rare smile, Elvis suddenly felt that the strange taste in his mouth was not so unbearable anymore. Chapter 180. When Gu Mingming was done laughing, she pushed herself up with both hands and jumped down from the huge rock. Before her feet touched the ground, Elvis caught her and held her in his arms firmly. The ground is cold, be careful. Gu Mingming's heart warmed and she responded with a yeah. She took the potatoes from Elvis's hands and only realized when she placed them in her hands. Was this really a potato? It was almost as big as a dragon fruit. Weighing it in her hands, this potato was at least 1 caddy. Then the string of potatoes in Elvis's hands, damn, she was rich. As long as she plucked this patch of potatoes, it would be enough for the entire Saint Nazaire tribe to eat for a year. Of course, Gu Mingming neglected a very important problem. Many males in Saint Nazaire, like Elvis, were carnivorous beasts. Potatoes were really not attractive to them. Of course, if it was to perform for the females, they could even eat 1 caddy of soil, let alone potatoes. But to be used as food, it was not a good choice. But Gu Mingming did not think about these things at the moment. She was immersed in her own fantasy world. Potato shreds, potato strips, braised potatoes, potato stew with beef. No, she did not see a cow after coming here. Then potato stew with tiger? It was quite scary just thinking about it. A tiger's head was placed in the middle of a pot of potatoes. Damn, the tiger was looking at her. No matter how she thought about it, she looked more like the food. No, it was too heavy taste. Indeed, she could not get used to it. Elvis watched Gu Mingming's expression change every now and then. He could not help but recall the first time he met her. She was also like this. He did not know what she was thinking, but that weird expression made him want to smile. Hugging and kissing Gu Mingming, Elvis asked, "What are you thinking about? Tell me about it." Gu Mingming shrugged her shoulders and said, "I was thinking, how are we going to bring these potatoes back?" Elvis tilted his head slightly and said, "Someone helped us. We will take as much as you want." Gu Mingming tilted her head with a face full of question marks. Elvis called out to the people behind him in a low voice, and a few figures popped out from the forest far away. They quickly arrived in front of Gu Mingming and Elvis. Gu Mingming took a look. They were all familiar faces. "Barit, Colin, Oakley? Why are you guys here?" Gu Mingming asked with a smile. Colin scratched his head innocently and said, "I saw Barit following you out of the tribe. I thought you might need help, so I followed." Oakley took half a step forward and smiled at Gu Mingming. "I haven't seen you for a few days. I was afraid that you would forget about me if I didn't come out any longer, so I followed you here." Gu Mingming nodded. Barit did not say a word and just stood there quietly, his gaze never leaving Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming shook her head with a smile and said helplessly, "Since you're already here, why are you sneaking around? Can't you just come out and say hello?" Oakley pointed at Colin and said, "He pulled me and didn't let me come out." Colin immediately pointed at Barit and said, "I wanted to come out at first, but Barit stopped me. He said that you would not be happy to see us." With that, Colin turned his head to look at Barit and said, "Why are you lying?" Gu Mingming was clearly not unhappy. Barit was speechless. He sighed helplessly and said, "How many of these grasses do you want to pluck? I'll help you." Gu Mingming chuckled and said, "Pluck as many as you can. These are our rations for the winter." Aside from the topic. Chapter 181. Once they heard that it was Gu Mingming's food, how could the males not work hard? Barit, Colin and Oakley had pulled out at least 200 caddies of potatoes. Gu Mingming did not know if it was enough for the entire tribe to eat, but even if she ate potatoes for 3 meals in the entire winter, she reckoned that she would not be able to finish them by next spring. But even so, Elvis still felt that it was too little, so he handed Gu Mingming over to Oakley and plucked more himself. Gu Mingming looked at the huge string of potatoes, which she estimated to be at least 250 caddies, and felt deeply ashamed. Damn, the power output was indeed not on the same level. The barbells she lifted in the gym previously were all wasted training. So many fighting moves could only be used to bully a coward like Nina. In the end, Colin transformed back to his original form, and hung the 200 caddies of potatoes on his body. He did not feel that it was heavy, but it was a little cramped when he walked, as he was afraid that Gu Mingming's food would fall onto the ground. So the scene of this 2-story tall black bear carrying the potatoes carefully and taking small steps was even more comical than a circus performance. Gu Mingming could not help but laugh out loud, causing Colin to look back, and a potato fell from his head. Barit caught the potato quickly and threw it towards Colin. Colin instinctively opened his mouth to catch it and chewed on it. This time, Gu Mingming laughed even harder, rocking back and forth in Elvis's arms. She said breathlessly, "Ha ha ha, Elvis, is this called a crooked stick has a crooked shadow? With you leading the way, will the entire tribe eat raw potatoes like you? Ha ha ha." Elvis actually wanted to explain that firstly, they had never eaten this before. Secondly, before they met Gu Mingming, they had always eaten raw food. But strangely, Colin's reaction after eating the raw potatoes was different from Elvis. He smacked his lips, as if he wanted more. But thinking that it was Gu Mingming's food, he held back and did not eat another one. When the group returned to St. Nazaire, it was already afternoon. They returned to Elvis's territory in a noisy manner, and Barit and the other two consciously stopped at the outskirts of the territory. Gu Mingming smiled and waved. "What are you waiting for? Come in." The three of them then nodded and followed Gu Mingming into Elvis's territory. However, before he reached the entrance of the cave, he heard loud noises. Gu Mingming frowned and looked towards the source of the sound. She saw two females fighting each other. One of them seemed to be Sandy and the other, Nina. F***ck, are they bullying me at my doorstep? It just so happens that I have nowhere to vent my anger. Gu Mingming jumped down from Elvis's arms and ran straight towards Sandy and Nina. Nina had suffered so many losses in Gu Mingming's hands. Seeing Gu Mingming charging over in such a manner, she was so frightened that she immediately let go of Sandy and jumped back. She reached out a hand to block Gu Mingming. You can't bully me just because you have more people. Gu Mingming laughed coldly. Didn't you send yourself here to be bullied by me? Nina raised her head and said in what she thought was a noble manner. That's not it. I'm here to look for my mail. Gu Mingming smiled embarrassedly. You're here to look for your mail? Is your mail Elvis? Aside from the topic, I know everyone hates Nina and I hate her too, but she could not die for now. She still had to court death. Chapter 182. My mail is not Elvis, it's Leah. Nina raised her head even higher and looked at Gu Mingming with a provocative gaze, as if she was the victor. Actually, Nina's gaze was not considered provocative because her eyes were too small, and Gu Mingming could not see through her gaze at all. But at this moment, no matter what her gaze was, it looked like a provocation. Gu Mingming felt a sharp pain in her heart when she heard that. Ha! One slash to the throat, fast, accurate, and ruthless. Gu Mingming clenched her teeth and looked at Nina coldly. I wanted to hit you the previous time, but Leah stopped me. Now that you've sent yourself to me, let's settle our old and new debts together. With that, Gu Mingming pounced towards Nina. Nina shouted at the top of her lungs while dodging. Leah, where are you? Come out and take a look. This is Gu Mingming's real face. She is chasing after your female and hitting her. Come and save me. The more Nina shouted, the redder Gu Mingming's eyes became. Look all you want. Did she still care what a man who treated her as a tool would think of her? Gu Mingming feinted and dodged left and right, successfully blocking Nina, who was in a panic. She leaped up and rode on Nina's body, slapping her left and right continuously. Gu Mingming slapped her more than 10 times until her hand hurt, but she still refused to stop. Just as the slap that was raised high up was about to land again, Gu Mingming's wrist was clamped down by a force. Gu Mingming looked towards the direction of that force and her entire head of silver hair stung her eyes. Gu Mingming laughed coldly and turned her head to the other side. She looked at Elvis, who had already arrived beside her and was grabbing onto Lee's wrist. Trespassing into someone else's territory without permission. How should we deal with it? Elvis did not use too much strength to hold onto Lee's hand, but the strong pressure emitted from his body was already a clear warning. Elvis's voice was cold and without a trace of warmth. He said, "Let go." Leah acted as if he did not hear Elvis's warning as he stared straight at Gu Mingming with his long and narrow eyes. His thin lips opened slightly and he replied slowly, "Trespassing into someone else's territory without permission should be treated as an intruder and chased away. If necessary, you can bite and kill. However, I'm a witch doctor. I'm not bound by this rule." Gu Mingming ignored Leah and tried to retract her hand, but Leah tightened his grip. His brows were tightly furrowed. He just wanted her to take another look at him. Just one look would do. But in the end, she was still heartless. She kept turning her face to the side, not even willing to give him a glimpse out of the corner of her eye. Gu Mingming sat on Nina and stood up. She kicked Nina out of the blue and said, "Bring your female out of here, or else I will kill you." Leah did not look at Nina, who was rolling and crawling on the ground. He only asked gently, as if he was whispering sweet nothings to her. "How do I kill her?" Gu Mingming sneered. "How about digging out my heart?" "Ah, I forgot, you don't have a heart." Leah lowered his head to look at his left chest that was throbbing in pain. He smiled bitterly. "Heartless? If there really isn't, that's fine too." Gu Mingming pulled her hand back with all her might, even at the risk of breaking her wrist. She struggled while saying, "Don't touch me with your dirty hands. I feel disgusted." In the end, Leah still let go. It was not because of Gu Mingming's words, but because she would get hurt if she struggled like that. At that time, he could look on coldly as Quentin almost strangled her to death. But now he could not bear to even injure his wrist. Chapter 183. Gu Mingming didn't even look back as she turned and walked into the cave. Nina scrambled up and wanted to pounce on Leah, but she was so scared by Lee's cold stare that she didn't dare to move. Her mouth was full of blood and she couldn't even speak properly. She mumbled, "You haven't been back for a few days and I came to look for you because I was worried about you." Who knew that Gu Mingming would be so barbaric and hit me the moment she came? Look at my face, how badly did she hit me? Leah, you have to help me. Leah didn't say anything, but Elvis spoke up. You want to touch my female in my territory? Do you think I'm dead? But Nina wanted to explain, but Elvis couldn't be bothered to talk to her. He just said, if you don't want to be chased away before winter, don't appear in front of Xiao Meng again. Or else. Elvis didn't finish his sentence. He just stretched out one hand and transformed it into a wolf's claw. He hammered the ground, creating a huge pit. Nina was so scared that she didn't dare to speak and just stood at the side, trembling. Gu Mingming's sobbing and Sandy's voice could be heard from the cave. Elvis looked at Leah with a frown and asked, "Why did you suddenly appear?" Leah lowered his head and looked at his own hand. He muttered to himself, "Her palm is injured. If she continues to hit it, it will bleed. It must be very painful." Elvis sighed. Actually, he noticed the red mark on Gu Mingming's palm. But he also knew how hard it was for Gu Mingming to hold it in for the entire day. She pretended to be cheerful and laughed out loud over just a small matter. She laughed so hard that it made one's heart ache. He would rather she let it out like this. It was better than holding it in. So even though he knew that her palm was injured when she was plucking the grass today, he didn't stop her from harming herself. Elvis sighed and didn't say anything else. He turned and entered the cave. Seeing that Elvis had entered, Sandy tactfully retreated out of the room. Elvis hugged Gu Mingming in his arms and spread open her hand. His heart ached, but he couldn't bear to blame her. Gu Mingming wiped her tears and tried to cover it up. "There's sand in my eyes. It hurts a little." Elvis hugged Gu Mingming and placed her on his chest. He said gently, "The sand is in your eyes. It must be very painful, right? It's good to cry a little. Cry the sand out, and you won't be in pain anymore." Gu Mingming's tears, which she had finally stopped, started flowing again. She hugged onto Elvis's waist tightly and sobbed silently. When she was tired from crying, she directly fell asleep in Elvis's arms. When Gu Mingming woke up, it was already night time. Balder took Sandy back. Berit and the other two were still standing outside the cave, staring at the pile of potatoes on the ground. Gu Mingming felt a little embarrassed. She had asked him for help, but she only cared about tearing her love rival apart, leaving him hanging there for half a day. Just when she was thinking of how to speak without awkwardness, Colin scratched his head and stood out. He asked in embarrassment, "Gu Mingming, can I pluck some of this tomorrow?" Gu Mingming was taken aback for a moment before smiling. "You like it?" Colin nodded seriously and then promised, "I'll just pick a little to taste, is that okay?" Berit punched Colin from behind and said, "You're so promising. Snatching food from a female?" Gu Mingming was teased by the two of them, and her awkward mood dissipated. She waved her hands and said, "Aren't there some ready-made? Just eat it." Aside from the topic. Chapter 184. Colin was still a little embarrassed and shook his head. "These are your food. I can't eat them. I have to leave them for you." Gu Mingming smiled. "How much can you eat?" "This is at least 100 kilograms. Can you eat all of them?" Colin nodded his head seriously and answered, "Yes." Pfft. Gu Mingming could not hold it in and laughed out again. She said helplessly, "Then you can eat all of them and accompany me to pick new ones tomorrow." Colin thought for a while but did not do that. He said in a silly manner, "Then I will wait until I pick new ones for you tomorrow before eating these old ones." Gu Mingming did not force Colin any further. The beast world had its own code of conduct. If she kept forcing Colin and he really ate these things, He might be laughed at by his fellow tribesmen. This would be a stain on his future partner. Gu Mingming did not force Colin any further. Gu Mingming said, "Everyone has been busy the whole day. You haven't eaten yet, right? It's just that it's so late. I don't know if we can still hunt." Elvis placed one hand on Gu Mingming's shoulder and smiled gently. "What do you want to eat? I will find it for you." Gu Mingming thought for a while, and said she wanted to eat bird eggs. This suggestion stunned Elvis and the rest. That thing was delicious? But since it was Gu Mingming who said it, there was naturally no reason for him to object. However, Elvis was not as skilled as Barit and Oakley when it came to climbing trees. Hence, the two of them accepted this task and transformed into a leopard and a lynx, disappearing into the night with a few leaps. Colin stayed behind to accompany Gu Mingming in processing the potatoes, while Elvis went to hunt for some large meat. He knew Gu Mingming was timid and did not dare to eat many things, so he processed them outside in advance and only brought back pieces of meat. Without a male's sharp sense of smell, Gu Mingming would not know what kind of animal it was. Of course, Gu Mingming also wisely chose not to ask. The stone pot was placed on the fire, and Gu Mingming asked Elvis to cut the meat into smaller pieces, then put them into the pot with the peeled potato pieces to cook. Gu Mingming wrapped the dozen over bird eggs that Barit and Oakley brought back with mud, and placed them outside the fire to simmer. When the meat was almost done, Gu Mingming used her fingernails to scrape some salt crystals into the pot and stirred it with her long chopsticks. Immediately, the fragrance wafted out. There were various cutlery that Elvis had made according to Gu Mingming's description at home, but it was rather comical to ask males who ate raw food to use chopsticks. Gu Mingming did not expect everyone to be a gentleman like the people in the civilized world. She simply picked up a few large pieces of meat and placed them on a thin plate made out of stones. She distributed them to everyone so that they could directly grab onto the meat and eat as freely as they wanted. Actually, according to the appetites of the males in the beast world, this pot of food was only enough for one person to fill their stomachs, much less for 5 people to share. So actually everyone was just accompanying Gu Mingming to eat. Oakley said as he ate, "I heard that the water shuttles you hung there are in preparation for winter?" Gu Mingming nodded. "Yeah, marinating it like this will prevent it from spoiling easily." Oakley continued, "Today, the males in the tribe have hunted quite a number of things, and they have all been cleaned and cut into pieces according to Elvis's request. I'll send them to you tomorrow for you to marinate." Gu Mingming was taken aback. "Ah, you want me to marinate the entire tribe's food to survive the winter alone?" Aside from the topic, she finally finished writing the part that needed to be updated. These few chapters did not talk about feelings as winter was coming, and the most important thing now was to store food. Chapter 185. Oakley was also taken aback, then he shook his head and said, "Of course not, you just have to marinate your own food." Gu Mingming tilted her head and asked, "Then why did you send the entire tribe's food to me?" Oakley smiled and said, "You are the first beauty of the tribe. Of course you have the priority to choose the food. After you choose, it will be Nina, followed by Sandy and Maya." Gu Mingming raised her head and gestured for him to wait. "Why should Nina choose first? Sandy and Maya are also females. They should also be protected and taken care of." Oakley blinked his eyes blankly and replied, "Isn't this the order for a normal tribe? The first beauty takes priority, followed by the complete female, followed by the half-orc female, then the cubs." Gu Mingming snorted in disdain then asked, "Are there any cubs in St. Nazaire? Why didn't I see any?" Oakley hung his head and said dejectedly, "There should have been. Who knew what Nina was up to? She actually forced Quentin to smash his own nest of eggs." Gu Mingming remembered that Nina had mentioned to Elvis previously, saying that she wanted to prove her fertility was strong before she gave birth to Quentin's cubs. But as the former first beauty of the tribe's first litter of babies, she wanted to leave it to Elvis, so she forced Quentin to smash his own nest of eggs. Thinking about it, it was really perverted. People said that even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs. This Nina was really twisted. Gu Mingming was very resistant to talking about Nina, because she knew that she would not be able to say anything good about Nina. But it was not Gu Mengmeng's style to speak ill of others behind their backs. If there was something wrong, she would rebuke it in person. Gossiping about others behind their backs was too tasteless. So Gu Mengmeng clapped her hands and said, "Since there are no cubs, the single males can keep the prey for themselves. Tomorrow, I will teach everyone how to marinate meat for better preservation. While the weather is still warm, everyone should store more food, so that you won't starve in winter. As for the females, other than me, the other 3 have their own males. Let their males think of ways to get their own food. Of course, if any female suitor is willing to court my favor, I don't care, but I don't want this privilege." Barit and the other 2 looked at each other. They were so shocked by Gu Mengmeng's words that they could not say a word. Taking care of the females in the tribe was the responsibility of the males. Suddenly, "I will be in charge of Xiao Meng's food." Elvis interrupted. Elvis said, "Xiao Meng." "Xiao Meng," Elvis said. "Xiao Meng." Elvis. Gu Mengmeng took the food and ate it in small bites. The potatoes were soft and smooth, and after adding salt, they tasted like the best in the world. Forgive her for living for a few days without salt. Gu, and Xiao, Gu. Elvis said. He also took a bite of the cooked one, but he could only politely decline. Xiao to. Xiao tomorrow, I wolf, xiao to xiao coal. Xiao, to, xiao, and said xiao. Colin was sneakily stuffing an uncooked potato into his mouth. Being called out by Barit, he blushed and passed the potato in his hand to Gu Mengmeng, then nodded and said, "Yeah, I'll go with Barit tomorrow." Out of topic. Thank you to QQ Reading Ruyue, Xian, Qingfeng, and Qingfeng for their tips. Recently, I've had a bad cold and made a lot of low-level mistakes in my writing, such as typing wrong names, typing wrong words, etc. Thank you for your understanding and help. I'll try my best to correct them. And then, the author has a heart of glass. When he's sick, he's especially pretentious. So for the next few days, please praise him and bear with the criticism. You can criticize me after I've recovered from my cold. I've been very fragile recently and need love. Chapter 186. Oakley, who was trying his best to familiarize himself with Gu Mengmeng, fell into a rare silence. He stared at Gu Mengmeng for a moment before asking, "Do you really have a way to store food without spoiling it?" Gu Mengmeng turned around and without much thought, she replied with a yeah. She even nodded her head. Oakley asked again, "Do you really want to teach everyone this method?" Gu Mengmeng nodded again and said, "Yeah, why?" Oakley remained silent for a moment before saying, "Do you know how effective a method to store food can be if used properly?" Gu Mengmeng thought for a moment before replying, "Everyone can store more food in advance so that they won't have to suffer during winter. I have been hearing Sandy complain about starving during winter every day, and my ears are already growing calluses. If I teach everyone this method, Sandy will have food to eat during winter, and my ears will be saved. Yeah, this effect is really awesome. Come, there should be applause here." Gu Mengmeng said as she took the lead to clap. The 4 males did not know what applause was, but they also imitated her stiffly and clapped their hands. Only after Gu Mengmeng made a keep hand gesture in satisfaction did Oakley dare to continue speaking. Winter is also known as the season of death. Many orcs die during winter every year. If you can store food without spoiling it for the entire winter, you will be the god of this world, and it will not be a problem for you to unify the entire beast world. But you just taught this method to everyone so easily? Just so that you don't have to listen to Sandy's nagging? Gu Mengmeng looked at Oakley's shocked and bewildered face, and could not help but find it funny. She shrugged her shoulders and sent the potato into her mouth after blowing on it to cool it down. She savored the sweet and soft taste and smacked her lips. After thinking about it carefully, she opened her eyes in satisfaction and answered Oakley, "I am not Qin Shi Huang and have no interest in unifying the world. I just hope that everyone I care about can live a little more happily. If the knowledge I know can achieve this goal, then I will be very satisfied. Moreover, the The purpose of knowledge is to be spread and used. It is not a custom-made S&M underwear that can be hidden and ridiculed. Oakley did not say a word. Actually, he was already very confused when he accompanied Gu Mengmeng to collect honey previously. Fire was brought by the messengers of the beast deity 1,000 years ago. It symbolized absolute power and sacred authority. At that time, only the messenger's tribe had the right to protect the sacred fire. Once someone or tribe disobeyed, the flame devil would punish them without mercy. So even after 1,000 years, even though the sacred fire in the tribe of the messengers of the beast deity had long been extinguished and no one knew how to light a fire anymore, the messengers of the beast deity tribe still maintained a high level of authority in the beast world, and very few people dared to defy them. But Gu Mengmeng actually used that sacred fire to roast meat, smoke yellow needleworms, boil water to cook, and even let Elvis and Leah teach the entire tribe how to use fire, and how to prevent the flame of hope from turning into a flame devil. Now, she had taken out a method that could easily control the food storage in the beast world, and shared it with everyone so casually? A quiet voice was awakening in Oakley's mind. Could it be that Gu Mengmeng? Oakley was shocked by his own thoughts. He stared at Gu Mengmeng in bewilderment. The expression on his face was really complicated. To Gu Mengmeng, it looked like she had seen a ghost. Aside from the topic, thank you, QQ Reading Baby, for your 399 points of view. The song is over. The ending is not beautiful. Sorry, I don't know how to type the special symbol in your name. I realize that there are a lot of tycoons among my babies. Thank you, thank you. I saw some readers complaining about my slow progress, and asked why I am not getting to the main topic. Although I don't know what topic you want, let me give you a short-term schedule. Current mission: storing food. Killing someone. Survive the winter. Chapter 187. Gu Mengmeng looked at Oakley's expression as if he had bumped into a ghost, and felt it was rather funny. Everyone had their own ambitions. Was it not enough? Must everyone have the same wish? Gu Mengmeng turned back to look at Elvis and asked, "Do you want to unify the beast world?" Elvis looked into Gu Mengmeng's eyes and frowned slightly, as if he had fallen into an intense struggle. After a long while he opened his mouth and asked, "Unify the beast world, what's the price?" Gu Mengmeng thought for a moment and replied, "Probably because of loneliness. Everyone who stands at the peak and looks down on everyone else would find it hard to have anyone by their side. So in history, all the rulers would call themselves loners, loners who have no one to rely on. No one can be trusted and no one can be relied on. Your son might suddenly stretch out his sharp claws to you on a sunny afternoon, or your wife might suddenly strangle your neck in the dead of night. Not to mention your best friend. This is the price of power. It's very cruel but very real. If you want to have something, you have to give something. This is life." Looking at Gu Mengmeng's dramatic interpretation, Elvis suddenly heaved a sigh of relief. As if he had thought through something, he scooped the dancing Gu Mengmeng into his arms with a faint smile, and rubbed the tip of his nose against her little face, saying, "I'm not interested in unifying the beast world. I'm more interested to know what kind of price I have to pay to get you." Gu Mengmeng choked on Elvis's sudden confession, and bounced up out of reflex. She laughed dryly and said, "Why don't we talk about the 10,086 ways to unify the beast world?" Oakley felt helpless. It turned out that their ambitious tribe leader, Elvis, was also this unambitious after meeting his beloved female. But why did he suddenly feel so envious? Oakley laughed at himself. He had already guessed Gu Mengmeng's identity, and he was very clear that it was a fool's dream for a first-level orc like him to become her male. As long as he could do something for her, it would be the highest honor. With this in mind, Oakley collected his emotions and said, "Then I'll look for Bode tomorrow to gather more yellow sauce. For Sandy, I don't think he will reject me." Upon hearing that, Gu Mengmeng's eyes lit up and she nodded her head in agreement. She thought for a while and said, "Remember, don't take away all of their honeycombs. Do some good deeds and leave half for them." Oakley did not understand the logic behind it, but since it was Gu Mengmeng who said it, he did not raise any objections and just nodded in agreement. After Barit and the other two left, Elvis cleaned up the cutlery and returned to the cave. He automatically transformed into a wolf and laid on the beast's skin mat as a warm blanket. Gu Mingming originally did not have any psychological pressure towards Elvis in his original form, but his sudden confession today made her feel rather embarrassed. Elvis did not give Gu Mingming too much time to argue. He used his claws to tug, and Gu Mingming fell into his arms. He used his front claws to hold Gu Mingming in place. Then, he placed his chin on her head and closed his eyes. Elvis slept soundly, but Gu Mingming could not. King pervert. Where are you putting your claws? My 36D became your mousepad just like that. Gu Mingming gritted her teeth and prepared to use the aura she used to deal with the pervert on the bus to teach this pervert a lesson. But when she looked up, she met Elvis's blue eyes. That disdainful look in his sharp fangs could be seen clearly from such a close distance. Actually, it was quite good for Elvis to be like this, right? Thinking from another angle, maybe it was her 36D that had taken advantage of Elvis's front claws, right? Aside from the topic, following little baby's request, I wrote a small drama. Actually, I'm not very good at it, but I'll give it a try. Gu Mingming. Elvis, I misjudged you. You are a pervert. Elvis. Yeah, black. Gu Mingming was furious. She pointed at the entrance of the cave and shouted, "Get lost." Elvis smiled calmly and pounced over to press Gu Mingming down. He said, "Let's do it step by step, alright?" Gu Mingming was dumbfounded. She asked, How do we do it by step?" Chapter 188. The next morning, Gu Mingming was woken up by a loud noise. Turning left and right, Gu Mingming almost plucked out all the hair on Elvis's stomach, but still could not block her ears. Jumping up from Elvis's arms like a carp, Gu Mingming rushed out of the cave with a strong smell of waking up. She rolled up her sleeves and scolded. "Damn it, disturbing my sleep is like killing my parents. It's an irreconcilable feud. I want to see who is the one who wants to die and disturbs my sleep." With Gu Mingming's roar, the outside of the cave instantly became silent. But it was too late for silence, because Gu Mingming had already rushed out with a pair of sleep-deprived eyes. The first thing she saw was Nina's face, which was getting more and more detestable by the day. Without saying a word, Gu Mingming went up and grabbed Nina's beastskin dress, throwing her over her shoulder onto the ground. She flipped over and rode on her, raising her hand to hit her. This time, Nina was not her usual self. She did not provoke or retaliate, but wailed loudly, hit me, just hit me to death. It's better than having no food and starving to death in my own cave without anyone knowing." Sob, Gu Mingming. What exactly are you planning? Are you here to destroy Saint Nazir? Do you want all the females in the tribe to starve to death? Sob. I can't live past this winter anyway. Rather than starving to death, why don't you just kill me now? Her crying stunned Gu Mingming. This time, it was not because of Leah. Gu Mingming dusted her hands and stood up. The lack of sleep made her extremely irritable, so she kicked Nina, who was rolling on the ground, and said, cry again, and I'll cut off your damn tongue." Frightened by Gu Mingming, Nina immediately kept quiet and covered her mouth with both her hands. She did not know if she was afraid of making a sound or to protect her own tongue. But she just stared straight at Gu Mingming with a pair of cross-eyed eyes while covering her mouth. Gu Mingming made a gesture of stabbing her eyes and said, look again, and I'll dig out your eyes." Nina was so frightened that she hurriedly closed her eyes tightly, showing an inexplicable wretched and funny look. Gu Mingming really could not bring herself to smile at Nina. She just frowned impatiently and said, "If you have something to say, just say it. You came here early in the morning to make a scene. Apart from wanting to get beaten up, do you have any higher level of pursuit?" Nina covered her mouth and stammered something. It was as if she was talking while brushing her teeth. Who could hear her clearly? Gu Mingming went up and slapped her hand away. With a cold face she said, "Speak properly, scram after you're done." Nina felt wronged, but she did not dare to cry. She knew that with one word from Gu Mingming, Elvis would definitely pull out her tongue. So she replied while sobbing, "Why didn't you allow the males to give me their food? It's fine if you don't want it, but why can't I want it? After all, I'm a precious complete female. If I starve to death, do you know what kind of loss it would be to Saint Nazir? Gu Mingming used her hand to cover her ears. She snorted in disgust, scaring Nina so much that she immediately shut her mouth. She looked at Gu Mingming and Elvis, who was already standing behind Gu Mingming with a face as black as a dark cloud. Looking into Elvis's eyes, Nina truly felt that a bolt of lightning could shoot out from Elvis's eyes at any time and strike her to death. Aside from the topic, because the effect of the recommendation this time was very good, QQ Bookstore has decided to add me as a recommendation. December 15th to December 19th is the recommendation period. According to the editor's request, I will add updates at a speed of 5 times a day. This recommendation is inseparable from the fact that my babies vote for me, leave messages and chase after my articles every day. Thank you babies for your support. I hope my babies will continue to work hard during the recommendation period. Try your best to ask QQ Bookstore, and don't forget to vote and leave messages. Chapter 189. Gu Mingming looked at the males standing at the outskirts of Elvis's territory with large amounts of meat in their hands, as well as Sandy and Maya who were standing beside her. She did not answer Nina's question, but walked to Sandy and tidied her torn clothes and messy short hair. She sighed and said, "You are a bear after all. Why do you always look like you are in a worse state every time you fight with Nina? Don't tell me Nina's original form is a tiger or a lion." Sandy was more or less influenced by Gu Mingming recently, and was no longer that afraid of Nina. Especially now that Gu Mingming was around, she became even more daring. She snorted at Nina and rolled her eyes before looking at Gu Mingming and said, "What lion or tiger? She is just a pheasant. She obviously can't fly, yet she still claims that she is a bird." Previously, she used the fact that Quentin was the only male in Saint Nazir who could fly, so she swaggered around and made many unreasonable requests. But Leah and Elvis saw that she was a complete female and Quentin was indeed capable, so they satisfied her. Now that Quentin can't fly and she no longer has the title of the first beauty in the tribe, she still wants to bully others. "I won't tolerate it anymore." Gu Mingming nodded her head in relief, then patted Sandy's shoulder and said, "That's right. But next time, when you beat her up again, just transform and slap her to death with your bare paw. Don't give her a chance to whine, it's too noisy, understand?" Sandy blinked her eyes and looked at Gu Mingming, then at Elvis before saying softly, "Saint Nazir has a rule that we cannot kill our own tribesmen." Gu Mingming chuckled and said, "When I said slap her to death, I was describing her to death, not really asking you to break her to death. It's not good to dirty your own hands. But breaking an arm or a leg is still possible. Isn't winter coming soon? Treat it as an additional dish." Once she said that, not only Nina, even Sandy looked at Gu Mingming with a horrified expression. Gu Mingming glanced at Nina, whose face had turned green from fright, thinking that this girl would not dare to casually provoke Sandy in the future. Then he changed the topic and pulled Sandy's little hand to ask, "Do you also think that I'm wrong to tell the single males not to share food with the females?" Sandy shook his head and said, "I don't know what's right and what's wrong. I only know that I'll listen to what you say." Gu Mingming chuckled. She could not deny that Sandy's blind worship of Gu Mingming had fully satisfied her vanity, and this trust made Gu Mingming feel even more warm. Gu Mingming held Sandy's little hand and turned to look at Maya. "What about you? What do you think?" Maya was a little timid, but obviously did not dare to express her true thoughts. She just bit her lower lip and moved closer to Gu Mingming, whispering, "I believe you won't harm us. I'll listen to you." Gu Mingming nodded before turning back to face Nina. She smiled sarcastically and said, "So you're the only one who has an opinion?" Nina hardened her heart. This matter concerned the food for the winter. Even if she was afraid of Gu Mingming beating her, she could not back down. So she nodded her head firmly, silently imagining how tragic she must look at that moment. She was like a lone island in the vast ocean, not backing down no matter how the waves hit her. Ah, she must look extremely beautiful. All the males would instantly feel pity and admiration for her at that moment. However, she neglected an objective fact. That was wherever Gu Mengmeng was, other than her own partners, no one would even look at her. Aside from the topic, regarding the question about Nina's original form, I saw all sorts of answers in the comments. The correct answer has been announced. Is there anyone who guessed correctly? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.